just sent you on Messenger.
Hello and welcome to Britain's Hidden History with me, Ross Broadstock. Episode number 110. And they said it would never laugh. Never laugh. Oh dear. Line 2, start again. Never last. So, Croeso, welcome. Take us away, Arnie. And I'll be very impressed if anyone recognises this tune, which Arnie is playing beautifully. Right, yay, Target TV. You are indeed the first in the chat room. And a big shout out to Brighton. Well done, Brighton. Now an established Premier League team, I might add, on the football front. Arkash, yes, you are on time. You're early. Well done. Dean Morgan, good evening. Great. Hello, Dean Morgan. Thank you very much. Johnny Nigma, excellent. Yeah, we will be talking about part of that. The geopolymer concrete is going to come into this. Yes. Very good. And I've got my props here. Can we get Tavi to put some more sand in there, please? Alright, you have to fill it up for me. Right below, I've got my demonstration here. Now let's grab this. Oh, look at that.
I can do it.
You know what I mean? I can't draw in that, can I? This is all to do with how pyramids were done, how hieroglyphs are done. Good old something they got plenty of in Egypt, which I'm hoping you can see is, yep, sand, good old sand. I'm going to talk a little bit to give people a chance to log on. I can see numbers going up by the second. So, good old. So we're going to be using some of that tonight to show. Hello, Graham Holt, Gary Taylor, hello, Meg, Mandy, Marchell, brilliant. Wonderful to see so many people coming back week after week after week. Hippie Shakes there. Hello, Linda. Oh my goodness, loads of people online. There's loads and loads. Hello, everyone saying hello, being friendly. Evening, Croeso all. Right, I'm just going to say, I'm dying to get into this. Some of these subjects, there's one subject in particular I've been keeping up my sleeve for, not really up my sleeve, that's not quite right. I was waiting for the right moment to do a big launch. I was going to maybe go to Megalithomania and do a speech all about building pyramids. And me and the boys, we're going to build our own pyramid in the back garden, in my house, on the patio, and show how we did it and moved massive stones. Just myself and the help of, at the time, there'd be 9 and 11. So a couple of 9 and 11-year-olds, myself, we're going to build a pyramid and show it's not even difficult, never mind impossible. And then as we mulling around in the back of my mind, we never did it. Thank goodness, because we moved now. I don't know if people want to move into a place with a pyramid in the garden. Maybe they do. But anyway, welcome to... Can we hear again? Yeah? Right, so welcome to everybody. If you are new, so it might seem nothing to do with British history at first today, because it's going to be mostly about Egypt, although it does link back into British history, into Britain, and the fact that the migrations from that area, and you can read the hieroglyphs using Conglomerate. Oh, Angie, you need to get my book. I left my book out when I was working late last night doing my Conglomerate. So I got my Conglomerate book. I need to grab a copy of that. Angie's been handing notes, so it's all a bit last minute. Right, so just to welcome everybody. And I keep the news part we do at the beginning, which is updates about British hidden history. There's so much of our history that's just hidden and it's being lost all the time and destroyed. So about tonight, I've got so much to cover. It's like a double episode. So I'm going to whiz through that bit really quickly. Perfect, that's all good, excellent. Right, the picture I need is in my Facebook Messenger. I don't know how I'm going to get to that in the middle of the show. But there we go. Right, okay, so... the main writers we look at writers that are suppressed and history that people used to know, because it's all been written, it's all been changed, and tragically sites are being lost all the time. You can't build a pyramid any other way than a pyramid. I think you mean any other shape than a pyramid. We're going to look at actually give Ross and boys a thumbs up. Thank you, Target TV. Right, everyone, so if you're going to join the video, welcome on board. Now, last week I was talking a lot about Comyns Beaumont, and I've got a new Comyns Beaumont book this week. It seems that he's even more, thank you, that's brilliant, thank you, that his writing is just as suppressed as people like Wilson and Blackett. I've also been reading some Waddell, so thank you very much to Stephen in Ponty, who lent me a copy of one of his books, again, difficult to get hold of. Very interesting, and I was going to follow up from last week and go into that. But I found something this week which was just so exciting that because the other theory I've been going on for a long time, I've had my suspicions for years now, that the most visited item in the British Museum, which is the Rosetta Stone, supposedly the key to translating the hieroglyphs. Of course, it never was. And I've had suspicions for quite a while that it was a fake. The one on display, isn't it just the way of the world? The most viewed item in the whole British Museum. I believe, at the very least, it's been tampered with, but I think the whole thing is a fake. Now, reading Fomenko, which is all about chronologies and stuff, and I'm going to blow a little bit of a hole in one of his theories. Thank you, Arnie. Sorry, not quite ready. I'll explain in a second. That, what's going on?
No, I had to plug in the computer.
Oh, right, okay, I'm getting barged around. Okay.
Unplug the computer.
There's something in there right at the back of the 5th volume. This is my late night reading. They went, oh, that just provides the missing link to show all the things I talked about and the Rosetta Stone being a fake. So if you watch this on playback, I will put up the original caption card again if you want to jump straight to that main story. Otherwise, you've got a few things to crack on with. So, people talking about battery chambers inside the pyramids, all kinds of stuff. I don't think so. Is there a Discord channel? Not yet. Talking about me, I don't know how to do that yet. The boys will work it. Coral Castle was built of multi-ton coral blocks raised by that single man alone. I'm not sure that's how he did it. I think... why did the Egyptians build the pyramids to get to the other side? That's a bit of Warp Valley humour there, thank you. And why they built them and why they're placed where they are and their function is something Wilson and Blackett has written about, and with the help of volunteers, typing up all their notes, and that'll be coming out as a book soon, very soon. And I was thinking of sitting on this information and doing it as part of the launch of the book and everything. So look out for that one. Not sure what the book's going to be called or anything yet. But Alan Wilson, his usual genius, has worked out, and everything about the pyramids. And it all makes perfect sense once you see it. So we'll get onto that very soon. And amazingly, he was writing that back in the 1980s. Why he didn't publish those particular notes, I don't know. There are lots of things going on. But to me, that's some of their most groundbreaking work. And a lot of stuff we've done is obviously the Welsh history, the British history, and the King Arthur and all that. Incredibly controversial, got them into loads of trouble. And it ended up without a lot of the stuff being done. So we're bringing those books out, republishing them, building interest, sharing the information far and wide as quickly as possible. All right, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to jump through the news stories, as it were. Hang on a second. Start from here. Okay, so this is the main screen thing. Have a look on the picture on the right. There are some clues which are quite important. Bit of a blurry picture on the left. It's one I took at the British Museum. I've got better pictures coming up. Lots of pictures tonight. I am just so excited about this one. I could hardly sleep last night, which is really bad news. So I stayed up really late working on this. And then just to make it even more fun, I had to get up super early today to move a kitchen, which took hours and hours and hours. So thank you to Gatch and Ricky, to Gareth and Sally, the people who sold us the kitchen thing to move. I had to get the van all the way down to Swansea, which is glorious sunshine. It's a long old day. I got back later than expected. So I'm a bit running on adrenaline, which I've got plenty of tonight. All right, here's a little story, which I want to look into. 1 second. Sorry, there's very dusty work today. Moving, also clearing out an old derelict house and lots of plasterboards and the dust. Oh, because a little bit of the breathing thing, whatever you call it. So I can remember all this ancient stuff, can't remember. A bit of asthma, which has been a lot better lately. Pretty much gone, but all this dusty, shifting stuff around has set it off. Anyway, enough of that. I'm going to talk more about this next week. This was something that was posted on the Britain's Hidden History Facebook group, which you might want to get involved in. Come along and have a look at that. and it's talking about different shapes of houses, and this goes up. So I'm going to put the link in the description thing. I'm going to have a quick look at it now. Calm down, Ross. I'm just so excited. No, we'll just have a quick look at that. Okay, so we'll come back to that, because there's so much to cover tonight. It's going to be a 3-hour programme if you're not careful. Right, now one of the programs, if you watched the last couple of weeks... Oh, thank you. Excuse me, 1 second. This is very rude. That was pretty rude as well. I'm not timed. Right, the last couple of weeks we've been talking about Hadrian's Wall. So I went up to see Alan Wilson in Newcastle a few weeks ago for his 90th birthday. The great writer, if you don't know their works, or where have you been? Anyway, look at the camera glyphics, you can see the books there. Go through the backlog of videos, there's loads and loads and loads of them, okay? Can you so I can see the comments a bit as well on? So went up to Hadrian's Wall. It's the first time I'd been, and immediately struck me, I was like, hang on a second, that doesn't look 2,000 years old. It doesn't even look 200 years old. And I thought I must be going mad, and I thought, well, there we are now. It's on film, me saying all this, and looking at it and thinking this is bonkers. And then further research, of course, discovered that there's, in fact, none of it. None of the visible wall. I think it's none. I haven't come across any yet. Any of the visible wall that is more than 200 years old. How weird is that? There's probably buried remnants underneath and that kind of thing. But what happened was, 1830s, rich chap comes along and decides that, hey, this wall should be restored. So he levelled what was there and then built it up in the fashion which he thought it should be. And I'm really trying hard to find some archaeology reports, because the history of history I find as interesting as history. Any reports that have been written in the last, say, 180 years about Hadrian's Wall with dating methods, such as looking at the lichen on the stones and how the stones have been moved, and saying therefore it proves it's Roman era, it's 1st century or 2nd century, is all bunkum and hogwash, because it wasn't, because the stones walls we see today were put up 1830s or more recently, as we showed last week, 1950s, even 2015. Now another weird thing I'm trying to get to the bottom of, and please, if you're out there, do some research from your own chair, as it were, you can do this, is looking for early photographs and drawings and paintings of Hadrian's Wall, okay? So we've got, the only thing, Bob Morgan's been on this, I've been looking at it, I think other people have been looking as well. We can't find anything, which is really strange when you think about how crazy people were about watercolour paintings, early photography. You think about places like the Lake District, you'll find hundreds of them. And yet up here, nothing, which is strange in itself. And it seems, how much of this concept is ancient at all, and what does it do? And now, curiously, not the first person by any means to hit upon this being a con or a Hollywoodization or a fake or something like that. Because looking at Waddell, Lawrence Waddell, I've got the books. I've got all the books piled up here today. I've been running around. He was pointing out, and his books are written beginning of the 20th century, so 1915, round about then. I can't find the exact dates in the books, which is a bit weird. But it's round about the time of the First World War, roughly, either side of that, okay? And he was pointing out there already that the walls don't fit with being Roman, and there's also other names for them that refer back to the Picts building them in many parts of the wall. Another thing which struck me and Bob when we were there is if you have the wall and then a big ditch rampart thing, would you put that in front of the wall so the enemy has to cross the ditch and climb the bank before they get to your walls? Or would you, as it appears to be in so-called Hadrian's Wall and the Antonine Wall, both seemingly incorrectly named, that, as you can see on this picture, actually, on the right, the ditches and everything are behind the wall. This would be the north here. And if you look in the conventional guidebooks in archaeology, it's absolutely bonkers, because in there it says that it was to clearly demark the military area so that the civilians in this sort of area wouldn't wander into the military zone. I kid you not, that's the official explanation. It doesn't seem to cross anyone's mind that maybe they point the other way, and they were designed to keep people out of Scotland. I'll be going more onto that soon, okay? So here we go again. So this is from the east, okay? So that means the north is on the right. Even on this one, you can see little hints that this defence is behind the walls. It's all wrong, basically. Everything we're told about Hadrian's Wall, even on the official chronology, you see the wall was built by Severus, which is like 80 years after Hadrian anyway, who probably, if anything at all, would have built an earthen bank and put some small forts on it. Although I don't think Hadrian was anything to do with it. I'm not even sure if Hadrian was in that century. But there we go. That's for another day. So here's some interesting ones. But the good news is, and I'm sure Bob will be delighted to hear this when he sees it, this idea, someone has sent me, Charlie John has sent me, has finally found an early photograph. And I mean really early. Really early, really early. Okay. So look at this. How about that? Photograph of Hadrian's Wall circa 122 AD. So this photograph is almost 2,000 years old, okay? As you can see, the wall is looking absolutely tremendous. The forts, the mile forts, are actually on the wall where you'd expect them to be, so you can walk through them, as opposed to 50 yards behind the wall, as some of them are in our Disney version we got in the north of England. And it said there, thank you, Charlie John. Earliest photograph of the wall is almost 2,000 years ago. It's taken by Publius Aelius Trianus Hadrianus Augustus with a Pentax SLR 55mm lens. And as Charlie puts it, so no more nonsense about the wall being British, please, because you can see it there clearly with the Roman soldiers on it. I love this. I absolutely love it. Whoever made this, genius, wonderful, and it's as realistic as any other information that we're fed about Hadrian's Wall, okay? I want to show something else on that. I got a video of someone. Just a reminder, this will be in the description. Please sign the petition to try and save Eglwys Hill, also known as St Genevieve Common. They're just going to be covering it with 200-metre high wind turbines, which, if you go on this playlist, you'll find one there called Windfarm Devastation. I don't usually get into politics. I desperately stay out of it. I'm not a member of any political party or any political movement or anything like that. This whole channel is unaligned, okay, on all the major issues. Where it's become unavoidable is when they start building things all over historical sites, and the wind farms are the worst for doing this. They're putting them all over the hills, all over. And what people don't realise, I'm not going to this too long again because I bang on enough about it, is it's the roads, the access roads and the platforms with the cranes. They cause the most damage, and the concrete platforms and the roads, they'll be there forever. They'll never be got rid of. And the archaeology and historical evidence is also destroyed forever. Whereas these things are an abomination. They do not, just producing them alone uses more energy than they're going to save. It's a scandal, an absolute scandal, and they only last 20 years before most of the parts get landfilled. So there we go, I'm going about it again, but just to let you know. Here's a little story, a little bit of current events on here. Hang on a second. So I can jump over to this. No, I can't. I thought not. Okay, hang on 1 second. I have to go... Oop. One of these days we'll get to this all fancy... where are you? Archdruid, right here he is. Okay, let's jump to this quickly. Thought this is a weird one. Thank you to Paul Hartel, the editor of Conglomerate. The book about how to read hieroglyphs, very easy. Right, so the Archdruid says Welsh language has no strongholds left and calls for tourism tax. This is the weird one, really. There he is, good-looking fella. So the Welsh language has no strongholds left. So I think what he's trying to say there is that there's no areas where it's all Welsh speaking, and we get more and more taken over by non-Welsh speaking. I'm not a Welsh speaker. I'm trying to learn. Of my 4 grandparents, 3 spoke Welsh, and none of my parents did, or neither of my parents did, because it was just crushed out of people. So it's taken a long time to come back. And what's happening now is, I would suggest, part of the problem here mainly is that There's a huge influx of people coming into Wales. Population is going to increase by, let's do the maths roughly, well, it's not far off a quarter in the next 20 years or so. People have no idea how many houses are going to be built, how many new people are coming in, and how the old culture is going to be drowned out completely. All right. So he said that it's a Welsh language festival in a Welsh language area, but there are no Welsh language areas, is basically what he's saying. It's all under pressure. This is weird now, okay? What became apparent during the pandemic was that the tourism we have in West Wales is not possible without a legion of key workers available to support those visitors and the services they provide. My solution would be then let's encourage more tourism, more tourists, and paying for things. A lot of what we do in this channel is showing historical sites which should draw people from all over the world, spending lots of money and helping the economy. But the weird thing is, the solution is to bring in a tourism tax, which, I don't know, just seems madness to me. It's like, let's make our product more expensive. But there we go. So you have, to illustrate this point, the Archdruid told a story of a man who worked at a garage in the Conwy Valley, which was busy with summer visitors. He noticed one visitor arriving, heading straight for the air punt, pumping a front tyre on the driver's side and going back to his seat without buying petrol or a packet of crisps or anything. Oh, that's a pathetic story, isn't it? The local businessman said 3 words, air costs money, bent down, let the wind out from the tyre. Oh my God, how pathetic is this? Anyway, I'd rather not read that. It's kind of like a huge own goal for encouraging people to come to Wales, isn't it? Let's look at something a lot more pleasant. Cole has posted this. And I'm going to just, disappear quickly. Which is the one which is... hang on a second. I'm going to go back to the beginning. This is great. It's going to slight musical interlude. I'm just making sure I press the right button. Have I pressed the right button, Ollie? Yes, I have. Good. Let's give you 2 seconds. Enjoy. It's just a 3-minute video. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And I plugged the channel, and he's given me permission to show this. So enjoy this just quickly. Slight musical break. Make sure it's not too loud. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, sure.
All the relics of King Arthur, buried neath the car park in the heart of Glastonbury town, between Silver Street and the Abbey grounds. That's where King Arthur's bones may be found, That's where King Arthur's bones may be found. And the relics of our Lord were smuggled all on board of a tin ship from Galilee, and sailed across the sea with Joseph of Arimathea till they landed on the coast of Cumry, till they landed on the coast of Cumry. And the pyramids of Britain, they are well and truly hidden underneath yonder hill and vale. And oftentimes I ponder if I should take a midnight wander and bore a tunnel underneath the Tor, and bore a tunnel underneath the Tor. What secrets lie beneath our ancestors' bequeath that have cruelly been kept from kin and kind? With the hidden hand that the dark mages command, there are certain doors you cannot look behind, There are certain doors you cannot look behind. And as hard as they may try to hoodwink you and I, every dog must have its day. Though they may run and hide, well, no one gets out alive. Only God can know the price that they must pay. They must pay. Only God can know the price that they must pay. dragons in the ground sleep beneath the mounds, forgotten they slumber in the deep. And it's there they shall remain till the dark age is slain. It's our generation holds the key, holds the key. It's our generation holds the key. Oh, the relics of King Arthur buried neath the car park in the heart of Glastonbury town, between Silver Street and the Abbey ground. That's where King Arthur's bones may be found, may be found. That's where King Arthur's bones may be found. One more. All the relics of King Arthur buried neath the car park in the heart of Glastonbury town, between Silver Street and the Abbey ground. That's where King Arthur's bones.
Oh,
All on board of a
sorry.
ship from
Ah, I messed the wrong button. Sorry.
King Arthur's bones may be found. One more. All the relics of King Arthur buried neath the car park in the heart of Glastonbury town, between Silver Street and the Abbey ground. That's where King Arthur's bones may be found, may be found. That's where King Arthur's bones may be found.
Hey! Well done, well done, well done, well done, well done. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Well done, and hats off. Whoa, hang on a second. So thank you very much, Cole, for sending me a link to that. That's brilliant. And I'll love to see that. People doing something, getting active. So, make some music, get involved. We might have a little bit of a different idea about where King Arthur's bones are actually buried. But, hey, the main thing is a King Arthur, and he was real. He does have bones, and they are buried somewhere. And also the story about Jesus coming to Britain and all that kind of stuff. Loads more on that every week. All right, so thank you, and Son. I don't know the name of the son, but and Son. Well done. It's brilliant stuff. So I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly thoroughly did. And if you've got anything relevant to these subjects you want to send through, please do. I'm always happy to give a plug. Now, I'll put a link, as you can see, to Colm Gray. Just search Colm Gray on YouTube, you find him. There's some other cool videos there, and I'll also put a link up later. Right, okay, so I'm charging on to the main events of the evening. This is the main event of the evening, as they say in the boxing. I'm jumping through it. Now, a lot of these ideas, I can still hear myself in the background. A lot of these ideas, like I said, I was working late last night, and it suddenly completely changed the whole thing. So it might jump around a bit. Now, what planned for a long time is to put particularly the Rosetta Stone into make it into a proper film and have lots and lots of the whole story of the Rosetta Stone, all the pictures and everything like that. But it just never gets done. So bear with me. It's going to be done live. So if there's a couple of mistakes, because this gets complicated, all right? You need to have your thinking heads on, okay? So first of all, I'm going to just tell the story of... I'll show some pictures while I tell this story. So hang on one second, because the story of the Rosetta Stone itself is really interesting. Okay, let's get this on screen. Come on. There we go. So that's a slightly blurry picture of the Rosetta Stone that I took last time I was in the British Museum. God, a couple of years ago now. Where did the time go, eh? And just to explain for those, I think everyone knows about the Rosetta Stone, because they talk about the Rosetta Stone as being the key to translating hieroglyphs. And there's more to it than that, a lot more. So I'll just describe the stone itself briefly. There's three, what we would call blocks of text, according to the trade, registers, okay? So the bottom register, usually referred to as the first register, even though it's on the bottom, is full of a type of Greek. Okay, so now I've never looked closely into that, but apparently that translated fairly, I wouldn't say easily, but it didn't take huge amounts of time or effort to translate the bottom part, which is the Greek part. All right, okay. Now, there's so many twists and turns in this tale. Get yourself a coffee or a cup of tea or something stronger, and there's so many twists. Right, so the first thing is then, the assumption was made that this bottom register reads the same as the middle register, which is in a type of, how would you call it? It's this form of writing text. Usually, when Thomas Young started working on it, he called it enchoral, but later on it became known by Champollion as demotic, which is usually the term that's used. And some people will say, what's the difference between enchoral and demotic and things like that? Same thing, just different names. Don't get wrapped up by these names. People just make them up. It's I almost said something rude then. Okay, sometimes when you get research is swear slightly, okay? I used to do things called on some documents working in media. You'd have Puma research. I used to put this on the bottom of some documents. It's a bit naughty. Pooma. So it means pulled out of my arse, okay? Pulled out of my ass, so it's a bit naughty, a bit rude. Sorry, it's a family-friendly show. Please, on the comments as well, be nice and friendly. Don't say the sort of things I just said. Be nice. All right, so this is enchoral or demotic. Then at the top, which I've got better pictures and zoom-ins. This is just save time diving into my own little photo banks. There's random pictures in here, okay? Is the hieroglyphs. So the idea was all three read the same. So it was like, aha. We've got a block of text we can read, which means from that we can translate and work out how the other two work. Problem is, it didn't work. They still haven't really cracked the demotic or enchoral in the middle. Thomas Young and Champollion, they hacked away at it all their lives. And I think we're down to maybe half a dozen of the letters they supposedly worked out still being accepted because they don't work in other places and all that kind of thing. The other weird thing which it ties in is a bit missing here, but even without that corner, you can sort of get the idea there's an awful lot more bits here than there are up here. So this led to the assumption then, well, these must be, well, you would think you'd work out from this that these are letters and these are some sort of sounds maybe, that these can't be letters because there's not enough of them to make the words. And I think it's like 500 odd of these and there's 2,000 here, and there's a big difference in the numbers, okay? It's quite a long time ago since I did all the research on this. I wrote the book. Right, anyway, the stone itself. Oh, I'm supposed to scroll through the pictures. All right, okay. I'll have to multitask now. I'll tell you my story. Right, so the story of the stone goes back to the time of Napoleon invading North Africa. Hey, here we go. Can we go through the stones like this? Yes. Okay, so I'll just put some random pictures in the British Museum up while I'm there. I want to take some of these in, okay? Right, so when we're going back to the 1790s, about 1798, and Napoleon had taken his army to Egypt, and when he went there, he fought the wars with the Mamelukes, the famous Battle of the Nile, all these kind of things. And what happened while he was there was that he took a lot of scientists and artists and researchers, because he's very interested in finding out more about Egyptology, for whatever reasons, and Egypt is fascinating. And this gripped the whole of Europe, because all these amazing stories are coming back of these fantastic, which way is it? That way. These fantastic hieroglyphs, and this is a pictograph actually, where the drawing is symbolic. Hieroglyphs being the smaller symbols inside what's called a cartouche here, and there's general text. All these things, everyone was getting really wowed by it. Now, one particular place called Fort Rashid, so I always think it should be called Rashid Stone, really, but it's not as catchy as Rosetta Stone. They were digging in to defend against the British and Ottomans. By the way, another part of British history gets left out is the fact that most of the force, or at least about half, were actually Turkish Ottomans. They fought against the French, but they don't really get much of a mention. Officially it was the British, and the British were negotiating. So when they were digging away to defend Fort Rashid against the oncoming British and Ottoman forces, they were making entrenchments, and they came across that amazing stone, the Rosetta Stone. Okay, so what they then did was they found this, like, brilliant. This is the key to understanding these different languages. So the idea was then that, so when the British surrounded the castle, when the British surrounded the fortress, let's go back to the picture, it's a bit distracting. When they came around to the fortress, they negotiated a surrender. Now, the military surrendered, because after the Battle of Apukea Bay, when the fleet was sunk, they were pretty much stuffed. And Napoleon did his usual trick of escaping and deserting his army. It's amazing, really. He's the only high commander I know who lost 3 complete armies and is still considered a military genius. He left one army in Egypt, he left one army in Russia, and he left one army after Waterloo. So there you go. But anyway, moving aside from Napoleon, when the surrender was being done, the British were very clear that they wanted all the archaeological items that had been found, including and specifically mentioned the Rosetta Stone. The French scientists and explorers who had these items said, no, we are not part of the French army. We do not count as part of the surrender. We are part of the society, the Egypt they call it. They set up an Egypt scientific body, and they were part of that. So as far as they were concerned, they were outside the military surrender. And not only that, they considered the items they found their personal possessions. Not the possessions of the crown or the army or anything like that. It's their personal stuff, which they could not take off them just because of a surrender. And the stalemate went on for months and months, and his diplomatic messages back and forth. In the end, they had to surrender, and they coughed up all the stuff, including the Rosetta Stone. And then for some reason, a weird thing happened where the British actually smuggled the stone out. Okay? Now, I think this is significant. There's many different stories about this because no one's really sure. The most likely seems to be they put it into a gun carriage, so the bit you tie to the horses between the cannon and the horses, in there, sort of a limber in there, and they took it that way and took it back. So why all the secrecy? So when it got back to London, it was then held by the Royal Society, who hung on to it for quite a long time, many months, before finally releasing it for public display. So I was being suspicious and thinking, what happened during that period? Why did they hold on to it? Why so much secrecy? Why is it such a strange story? You would think that when they returned to London, they'd be parading the streets, with an open carriage, and here's the Rosetta Stone, everybody have a look at it, and everyone's like, whoa, it's amazing, isn't that fantastic? It's almost as though they didn't want anyone to see it. Maybe they didn't want anyone to see what the original looked like. Now, at the time, you have to remember the political pressures that were taking place. It was revolutionary France. The French were killing the aristocracy and, chopping off the heads of royal family members. And they were taking on the old ancient regime, the old royal families around Europe who were quite nervous about this. Most noticeably the British, the Austrians, who were at war with France. So there's enormous amounts of rivalry, not only national pride, but a pride and belief in the best system. Could a newfangled republic have the nous and ability to outperform the old kingdom? And this is where the contest comes in about deciphering the hieroglyphs. It was national level, the competition. Now, it strikes me that the British, if this Rosetta Stone was seen as the key, and it's still seen as the key to translating them, even though no one's actually translated the hieroglyphs, the hieroglyph register part of the Rosetta Stone. How weird is that? After all this time, it's not being read properly. And I think that can be explained as well. Okay, so let's show a couple more items as I talked there. These are just random ones. Oh, that's a really bad photograph. Sorry, some shockers here. This is one that must be from the Rosetta Stone. Here we go. This is one you want to look at. Important. Don't worry about the actual symbols. Try and get a feel for what they look like. How do you think those were created? How do you think those hieroglyphs were made? Do they look like they were carved? Amazing piece of carving if it was, isn't it? Have a look at some of the softer edges and things. Have a look at these. That looks a bit more carved, perhaps. Oh, you can see the outline of my hand. Back when I was still using a camera, that's how far back it is. Not even my phone, I don't think. Alright, so there's more of these. Do they look carved or do they look moulded, perhaps? Alright, so there's another one there. They're a bit random, these photographs, so I haven't a chance to put them into a proper thing. Now, this is a very relevant one. Look at this one. These might well have been carved, I think. I don't know, because what I'm about to show you changes everything. So have a look how neat they are. They're so beautiful. They might be carved. They're absolutely stunningly beautiful and neat, okay? It's a close-up of those. So I just get distracted starting to read them. Then you can read all these are hieroglyphics. These make pretty good sense, most of them. Oop. So I'm as mystified as you what picture's going to come next. Okay. So look at the neatness of these. All right, now we've got the Rosetta Stone. And if we come closer, you can see the first clue, the one that always got me suspicious, is how poorly carved it is. Yeah, that's a better photograph there. I hope you can see that. It's suddenly, compared to the other stuff where all the lines are so neat and everything, this looks quite rough. Now, I think one of the official reasons given for this is that it's a much later period. You get this usual thing that seems to happen in mainstream history a lot, is that people forget things. We're going to get my shoe saying that and do exactly the same thing tonight. And things can get worse. But it looks to me like... Hang on, let's go back a couple again. Compare that. And don't forget, I took these photographs in a random order, random things. Just I was wandering around a few years ago. I wanted to get some pictures of the Rosetta Stone for the book, and some other pictures to illustrate the book, such as the... there's the Moses arch and things like that. And then compare that. And if you look at even closer, I've got some close-ups coming up, you'll see this to me always looked really rough. It just didn't look right. And the other thing that notice about it is when you're trying to read it, it doesn't quite read right, you know. And if you spend a lot of time, like when I was doing this book, I spent months and months just buried in hieroglyphs and translating them and looking at them all the time. You look at this and you think, why is it so... Little things like this immediately jumps out here. This is supposed to be a mattress, in Welsh, which has got like two straight edges and a curve. And you look at it and you think, oh God, I'm a right butcher's job of that. And this is presumably a mouth. And again, it's just not well done. I can't really judge then coral because I haven't worked on that. Look at that. It just looks rough to me. It just looks rough. This is the important bit, by the way. Just spotted this. I don't know if it's big enough on your screen. Can I zoom in? Yes, I can. Excellent. Brilliant. Oh, I have to use this again. This is great. Oh, I can move around, anything. Oh, yeah. This is better than PowerPoint. Right, okay, so here's a great one here, just to show you how it works. I don't spend too long reading hieroglyphs. But that's a square. That's a semicircle. So what we have there is the door, the entrance, portis. We get porti, supreme when you are. And this, you take your pick if you think it's a slingshot or you think it's an olive. Either way, it translates. And you got Flew, the lion. So look how badly drawn that lion is. Yeah. And this, the mattress. And these are two feathers. I mean, and this is hacked out completely, which is, again, suspicious. So what this is, this is Ptolemy's. And then we have the snake, which is in Welsh is Naida, which means not. So there's life symbol. And there's the you are of this place. So you're life not of this place you are. So you're immortal. You're not of this place. All right, let me go on. And we can't read this because it's been bashed up. So it all seems a little bit strange, or it's been mutilated, or something's not right. Look at the quality of the carving. To me, that looks like it's been drilled or something. It doesn't look like it's been carved. Just to... how do I get back out? Oh, this is great. We'll do this again. So I'll just show you there. Look at that. Look at the difference. So I can find another madras or something in there. That's Sagan. That's a cloak. See, there's beautiful, nice, clean lines everywhere. So I have a suspicion for a long time. And the difference tonight, and why I want to actually show it, is I think we got some evidence and how it was done and why this looks so rough. Look at that. I mean, that's just... Okay, so that's the basic thing with the... So, I'll just jump straight in it. So with the Rosetta Stone, what it seemed to me, my suspicions were that because this enormous competition between the French and the British to who can crack the hieroglyphs, and it was hugely important, national pride was at stake here. The British, one of two things happened, logically one of two things happened. In that time when they had the stone hidden, either one, they cracked hieroglyphs and could read everything the Rosetta Stone said and then mastered the subject, or two, they couldn't read it. It's only two things that could happen. They could either read it or they couldn't read it. I could read it a bit, perhaps, but it's one or the other in general terms. If they did read it, they kept it extremely quiet how they did it, which is possible, okay? But to me, extremely unlikely for 200 years. Let's just look at a bit of this. It doesn't quite work as proper hieroglyphs should. Now, so the more likely option to me seems to be they could not translate it. They did not work it out. And then the history, what happened next, like Thomas Young, the genius of the era. I mean, the guy was amazing. I should put my cartoons up from the book. Hang on. That's, his genius, he was the one who worked out how eyes could see. There's a drawing I did of him in the book. He worked out how eyes see different colours. I mean, he worked out how to calculate the dosages for children. In medicine, he was just a genius. There's laws named after him to this day. There's loads of Young's principles and Young's laws and Young's rules. The guy was the top man. When they were bringing in gaslighting into London, he was the one brought in to work out the way to do it safely. He was brought in to deal with shipping issues, all sorts. He was a genius. And he walked away saying he couldn't work it out because the problem was they did not know the language of the hieroglyphs, which of course we now know it's Welsh. They tried hundreds of languages, they wouldn't try blinking Welsh. But anyway, that's another story. We're not really talking directly about Cymroglyphics tonight. So I think you've got a situation where, this has been my suspicion for years now, that the worst possible nightmare, what would be your worst nightmare if you're the proud, aristocratic British, we rule the world, we're the best in the world, and you can't crack it, and you make it public, and you send that, to me, the worst possible nightmare would be then this little brat from France who disrespected Thomas Young and disrespected the Royal Society. I don't think he intended to. He was just a bit crude with his manners. Was going to suddenly send you a letter saying, ha, 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 thank you for the Rosetta Stone, I've done it. To me, that seems like they wouldn't let that happen. So one of two things happened. Now, both are possible. And what I thought, well, what it comes down to is they've had to fake it. That's my hunch. It's just a hunch, all right? And one of the things they could have done, because some of this is definitely fairly genuine, all right? So one thing they could have done, and this either are as feasible, they were for me anyway, is just drill it out and just make it enough of it indecipherable that it's no longer useful as a key. So you got the original somewhere, like you can still see this is a bird, some sort of, maybe that's the vulture's neck. That's the mouth. I mean, it's just appallingly badly done. It should look more like this one, which isn't much better. There's there's mistakes. It seems wrong. So maybe they've just, it looks like a drill to me, judging by the jagged edges and everything. So if you're trying to hold a drill, they couldn't have done this with a chisel. And the problem is the stone is extremely hard, the stone that the Rosetta Stone is made out of. And we'll come on to that as well in a second. So where you end up with a situation where they could mutilate the existing one, or what I have always thought happened, they produced a replica. And this is why it was so important, they might have pre-planned this to a certain extent, for no one to see the original Rosetta Stone. It was completely hidden, smuggled out in darkness, in the back of a carriage, not on public display for many months, which I think was their window of opportunity to try and crack this before the world got to see it. And then by the time they released it, some skullduggery has definitely taken place, and I would say the whole thing is faked. Now, one of the interesting comments at the time is when they did finally send a copy to Champollion, he said it was of such poor quality, the copy, that he couldn't work from it. I would suggest it's poor quality copy because the stone was poor quality. Oh, look at this poor little horned viper. His horns look like he's got antlers on it. Someone's made it right. Now, I think they've got the best craftsman they could find. And they got a similar stone. And they've tried, and they've tried, and they've tried. And it looks to me that they've used a drill. Because you can kind of see the bouncing of the drill on things like this. Can I zoom in here? Yes, I can. I think things like this, when you really zoom in, to my mind, that's been drilled. You can kind of see the drill's going a bit, you know, that's it hasn't even been chiseled. Now, the ironic thing is, apart from some exceptions, I think hardly any hieroglyphs were ever chiselled. Now, there's another twist to this story as well. Because, hang on, sorry, I'm talking about this. I'm not showing anything. That doesn't help, does it? Sorry. Pay attention, mate. So, okay, so we're looking at here. So this is this is what I was just showing. So you can see drill here. See that looks like a little series of drill holes around here. I can really zoom in. Fantastic. And here as well, you can see little drill holes. You can even see little dots where the point of the drill has been. See that one? Okay. And this definitely looks like it's been, butchered, really. And you can see the kind of, what I think also it shows is where the drill has bounced. So as it's hit that, it's gone, the drill. If you ever tried drilling onto a surface without a keyhole or a mark to drill into, you get this kind of bouncing. Like that, yeah? And all the lines have it. And I don't think it's different to if it had been scratched afterwards. Like if, I don't know, it was in transit, it's been put up against some rough stuff and got scratched, because the scratches had run across things. And they never seem to, all the scratches come out of a drill hole. Now, I don't know any other, and I've looked at a lot of hieroglyphs. I don't know any that look like this, as badly mutilated, or with the same mistakes. And I'm going to just go back slightly again to show you, give you a contrast. That's the kind of thing you're normally dealing with. What amazes me is how no one's thought before the Rosetta Stones are fake. I mean, it looked a fake to me the first time I saw it. It's something to, that's what the vulture showed you it should look like that. Some of it's not particularly well drawn, like that eye there is a little bit wonky, but still it's neat. There's no drill bounces everywhere. And this one is the one I think most likely to have been carved, whereas vast majority, I don't think a chisel ever went near them, and certainly not a drill. Alright, so there's another picture of it. Okay, I took lots of pictures of it, as you can imagine. There's Ptolemy's again. Hang on a second, it's interesting, again, you can't read the last part. It's really frustrating. Because what the conventional just say, there are, like it says Ptolemy's. They don't bother trying to translate all of this. It's weird, isn't it? But Ptolemy's had to stay, I think, because that was a recognised symbol. That was the only thing they translated, so they had to keep that in. That stays in, the rest just got messed about with. Okay, right. The key to Egyptian hieroglyphs, that was funny. Now you can see they say Ptolemy's there. Alright, bad photograph. Ptolemy's. As I was saying, Portis, and then you got this in hieroglyphics. They don't know how it's written or why. And there's it decoded. Look, see, just letters. But it's madness to say they're letters, because they can see immediately, if you look at the Rosetta Stone, there's not enough letters. There's just nowhere near enough. You got to, they're obviously sounds or words or something. And why isn't that EE and it suddenly becomes a Y? It's all nonsense. Anyway, we're moving on from that, because I want to get back to there's some cool stuff at the British Museum if you've never been. There's more hieroglyphs. See, even there on this big crude ship here, look how much neater they are. Alright, it's important. I'm sorry I'm going on about this neatness and everything, but you'll see in a minute, it's absolutely crucial. Look at this again. Look. See how they're done? And also, look at that. Do they look carved? Or does this look? Now, what I think, this is going to try. Can you have my trusty prop, please, Arnie B? Unrehearsed, because I was going to do the thing with two cameras.
I filled it up for you.
You filled it up. Thank you very much. Now you're getting a very genuine experience here, because I've got some. Hang on a second. God, it's quite heavy actually, isn't it? Some sand. All right. So I'm just going to pat flat a second. Sorry, Arn. I'm sorry. Well, art has its price, doesn't it? And you can cover it in sand is one of it. All right. So I'm going to try. I don't know if I can do this in front of the camera. We've got a massive lag, so I'm going to try. Like, for example, I've got to do on here. That dodgy mouth we were trying to draw there, there's a better version of it there, because I'm going to use that because Rossi is part of my name. If I do this on here, alright, easy enough. I'm doing it upside down and backwards. All I have to do then is just smooth that down slightly. Yep, I made a bit of a mess of it. Doesn't matter really, because I can just tidy up. Okay. And immediately, and then the effect, the finish, is very, very similar to that one, okay? Which would imply they've been sort of drawn into wet clay or something like that. Now, one of the things... Thank you, Arnie. Demonstration. I've got an injured arm at the moment, so I can't do it for too long. You get the idea, and you can try it yourself, okay? So immediately, now, a lot of these are on... people can jump in, I'll put something on the comments. I can't really see very well. I'll just keep going. Is that a lot of them are done on plaster. So that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? This one might even be plaster, okay? Where you've got a brick wall, you've done your brick, and then you plaster it just like we would in the modern world. Or if you're concrete in your drive and some cat walks across it and leaves their prints. Great, thanks a lot. You've now got a permanent paw print or a drawing. If someone wants to draw their initials in concrete, you've probably seen it, right? Good fun, yeah? So this is what has happened here. Now, the other curious thing as well here is that when things are repeated, so this is a great example, because you can see here this and this are the same, but they're different sizes and they've clearly been hand-drawn. It's slightly wonky that way and slightly wonky that way. So this is pretty clearly they've been drawn into plaster. The curious thing is, this is stone. It's not plastered. It's not plaster. It's not like the walls where they generally paint on the plaster. This is blasters. Sorry, let's try again. Sorry, I've got mixed up my sharing. Sorry about this. Right, so you got the... See, these are the ones that look like it's been sketched into the plaster. And you think that's quite natural. And here, this is why you get so much relief stuff. And there's another example I've got. I'm not sure I've got the picture in here, where you can see where stuff's been added. So if you ever done in art class, you get a clay pot or something, and you make those little plasticine sausages, and you put them on. You can see that. You can see very clearly. I hope I got the pictures in here for that. And this is why you get so much relief stuff, because when you're drawing something, it's easier. If you've got a mould, like the mould of these faces, for example, you push the mould in and push the sand away all the way around, and that's you get this 3D moulded effect. So I'm pretty convinced that most of these have been done with moulds, and I've been thinking this for ages. Now, what we also get into, what I hadn't done before was make certain connections. All right, so here's some more examples here. Stella of Roma. Sorry, there we go. That's it. That's enough for those a second. Let's go back to the presentation thing. 1 second. Right, now we go on to Fomenko. Okay, now just to explain, if you don't know who Fomenko is, oh, by the way, the Babylonians as well, I think, did a similar thing, as we'll come on to. I don't think this is carved either, or any of these. And I've had this theory for a couple of years. Now, where the connection needs to be made, what turns out, then reading Fomenko last night, is, if you're not aware, Fomenko, in many ways, he's doing what I'm doing, in that he wasn't the original person for a lot of the ideas, in the same way as I'm producing a lot of Wilson and Blackett's work, and which is this. So I should have made that clear. This is their breakthrough. I just explain how you do it. All right, I didn't crack how to read hieroglyphs. I don't want to give that impression for a minute. All I've just done is put it together in a way in which it's easy for you to learn, with lots of pictures and examples and exercises, so you can have a go yourself. Wilson and Blackett worked it all out, and in the same way, Fomenko, everyone talks about Fomenko, but it's actually people like Mozarov and stuff who came earlier, who were the clever people. What he did was apply mathematics and presented it and published the books and got the information out there. Fomenko, I don't think actually did anything particularly original. One in particular, catastrophism, was definitely written about in the 1940s by Comyns Beaumont. I was quite shocked, actually, when I'm reading his book, Riddle of the Earth, I think it's called, how much about catastrophism he wrote in there, which is accredited to Velikovsky, who was years later, and then other Russians. It's very strange, the whole thing. The history of history is as interesting as the history, how we change our ideas and where they come from and why we accept them. So the same here, okay? Now, what he was saying in his argument is, this is why I don't follow many of Fomenko's conclusions, just to make that clear. And here's another one I think I can put a hole in tonight, puncture another bubble. His thinking was that when the Napoleon, why would they do this, right? Because Right, Fomenko was saying that when the French soldiers got to Egypt and they started observing these statues and things. Let's a quick look. Got any more? All right, so slightly out of order a second. Oh yeah, there's one as well, the Pyramidion, which again is beautifully carved and reads absolutely beautiful. Oh, it's not a really good picture, that one, no? And reads beautifully using hieroglyphs. It just reads like a charm. It just reads word for word for word. It's a message of peace. It talks about the Trinity and the moving up the body. It's a joy to read. Is the Rosetta Stone hieroglyphs again, which Joe knows. And here's another example we'll come on to in a second. So Fomenko pointed this out. This is a picture shown in Fomenko's book. Managed to track it down. Not easy, which again is very strange. Now, if you remember, this is the picture that's lifted onto the caption card at the beginning, and I showed it earlier. What strikes you as strange about this? Can you turn it on so I can see? Hang on a second. Fomenko tried to structure the chronology in as broad and detailed fashion as possible. He had a good go at it. Well, I'm not sure he did have a very good go. I get a very, very, very good go at showing the flaws and why it's wrong. And I think that was lifted from Moserov. That's what I meant. That's the point I was making, though. It's not Fomenko's work, really. It's a bit like when I present hieroglyphs in a way you can do it yourself. Is Wilson and Blackett who made the breakthrough. So have a look at this. This is it's supposed to be Nefertiti. Can you see something strange about the face? First of all, you won't see anything strange. It's not on the screen. Sorry, I'm not concentrating really. Can you stop that? It's too distracting. Right, okay, so what we have here, just look at this Nefertiti and have a look at and see what looks strange about this face. All right, about the way it's made. Have a look at it. Well, the first thing is to carve this out of solid stone would be phenomenally difficult. I mean, how would you get those beautiful curves and get the two cheekbones on either side matching up would be incredibly difficult. So that gives the first clue that this is probably modelled in some way or moulded in some way. And there's a big clue. So if you look closely, I hope you can see it on your screens. There's a line running all the way down through the centre of this. Why would that line be there? I mean, if this is a solid piece of stone, why is there a line down the middle? There's no explanation at all for a solid piece of stone to have a line right down the middle like that. Whereas if you've made any models yourself, that was my full-time work when I started getting more involved in this, with making models and painting them and things. This is what's called a casting line. Because if you want to make a 3D head like that, it's very difficult. What you can't do is make a mould of the head and just pour everything in, because you get, I've forgotten something, I think it's called underhang, where gravity will push everything down. So say I was doing the fingers like this, you like this, you'd have a problem if you poured everything in. It wouldn't, oh yeah, that's a better one. If I do something like that, if you poured everything in through the sprue this way, gravity wouldn't let it go around the curvedy bits, or it wouldn't fall down into all the crooks and crannies. Like up the nostrils, for example, that would be clogged. It wouldn't work. So the only way you could do a head like this would be to do two halves and make sure this very flat in the middle and glue them together somehow. And this clearly you can see the line down the middle, how this was done. All right, this does all tie back to British history and Rosetta Stone and everything in a minute. Okay, I think probably guessing it already. All right, so this is an example on a horse system level. Now this one, I love this one because this is curious. You see, so if you look at the material, this is supposed to be, I think it's supposed to be granite. Could be marble, actually. I'm not sure. Anyway, either way, it's a very, very hard stone. I'll keep it twisted so I can see. A very hard stone. And yet, if you look at the way I wrote in the sand, or if you look at the other ones, it's the same technique. I would say there is no physical way this could be carved. Now, people might say advanced technology or aliens or whatever, but even modern with technology and stuff, you wouldn't be able to get to do this. And another thing you notice particularly about this shape, right, this half circle, the cake, the Titian lap, the T, the you are, so not you are of this place, you're immortal, And the shadows actually help us here. And research, according to what I've been reading, backs this up. You can tell that this semicircle was done with an object being pressed into whatever the material is. And the reason you can tell is because the person who's done it has pushed it slightly like that. So as is exaggerated by the shadows on this picture, this bit is deeper than the bit on this edge, which fits in with, like, if you're making those things out of potatoes. You do the children's models and stuff, you get potato in half and you catch it out and leave a raised bit so you can stamp onto wallpaper and things. Exactly the same, it would seem. Hang on, before I disappear completely, I'll put some lights on. And the same with this. So they've used some sort of mould, which also explains then why... Oh, I can't zoom in on this so easily. Anyway, you'll find, if you look at... hope you can see this large enough. These are identical. They're not just drawn very similar. Like that and that are identical. So this implies that a mould has been used. Because no matter how good an artist you are, you won't get them identical. You know. So hopefully people are following so far. So the difficulty we got now is this has been hand drawn into marble or granite or something very, very, very hard, which starts to seem strange, doesn't it? And here's a claim from Fomenko. Here's one of the statues supposedly carved out of a single piece. And yet this apparently is the structure behind it. It's made of blocks. And there's other examples where you can see towers, you know, the menhirs, I was going to call them then. What do they call them? Obelisks. An obelisk is the menhir carrier in the Asterix stories. So you've got obelisks going up, and you think it's one solid piece, as I'm sure some of them are. But I'm not that sure, actually. I would absolutely love to have a proper look at Cleopatra's Needle in London and the one in France. I think it's one in Italy. And have a look. Are they actually one solid piece? Because if you look at this one, what happens here, you make it out of blocks, and then you plaster it, but you plaster it in a form of concrete. And as someone pointed out in the comments much earlier, this is the key to it. They seem to have some way of making the concrete. There we go. Hang on. Dean Morgan's put something on here. It's made of geopolymer concrete. Yes. As are the pyramids. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we are watching something now, Dean. That's what we're talking about. So, you crack on this, and this is the interesting one here. This is the picture which I put a request on Facebook to see, because Fomenko says, for some reason, the French came along, and when they saw this on the back, they were so upset to see this cross that they thought was a Christian symbol that they wanted to blast it off. And part of the support for what they're saying about their change of chronology is they're saying that all Egyptian buildings, the pyramids, all these kind of things are medieval, and what they're using is this concrete making procedure. Okay, this is how they did it, and they're saying that's only developed in medieval times, and it came after Christianity. And this will be tied to another thing then, because what we're trying to do, Wilson and Blackley got work came out as well, showing the same links where you've got. That's be a brilliant book, this one, by the way. I can't wait. The links between this situation where you've got Osiris and Horus. So Osiris is the mother goddess with the baby Horus on her lap, is the same as Mary and the child Jesus. It's the same image. So what Wilson and Blackett do in their book is show how this old Egyptian Osiris cult moves around and ends up becoming Christianity, and how that spread from there. What Fomenko says is that actually it's the other way around. Christianity came around about 11th, 12th centuries before this stuff was built, and when what he calls the Scaligerians, the people who want to maintain our current chronology, even though it's full of holes, they wanted to get rid of this because it's evidence that Christianity predated Egyptian artifacts, which was heresy for them. They blasted it off. But I call foul here by Fomenko, because what he says was we have this drawing which was made in 1830s. I think his name was Catherwood, and you can just about see the hieroglyphs. The problem is I can read most of this, so that's not the problem. It's great I can read most of this. It's pretty clear. You got the old goose and sun there. Says Ragwith. That's the Lord. I must be able to blow it, zoom in on this, surely. Araglia, the Lord, and you got the agility of the way, and you can read all these things, and it reads fairly well, okay? So what Fomenko says in his book, this is the drawing we've got, or art really, from the American artist back in the 1830s. So, but since then it's been chiselled off because it doesn't fit the narrative, and therefore it had to go. But the weird thing is, doing searches, you find photographs from 1960s and 70s. I'm trying to find out it's still there, and that's a weird, big mistake for Fomenko to make. The fact is, again, the photographs aren't clear enough to quite read them, unfortunately. The top left and middle seems to be the messed up bits, but I will put a video up translating the rest of it. Just doesn't. But and what Fomenko's arguing is this large cross here is clearly Christian. I don't know, it could just be a cross. And one of the things you find when you read hieroglyphs, because Fomenko criticises the fact that you got a cross, which in Welsh a cross is croes, given the word croeso, it's a welcome. And then what he shows as a sort of a Celtic cross, for a better word, a circle with a cross in it. I think he calls them circle crosses. Well, Alan Wilson works out that's actually a wheel, and you get Roddy, which means something else. So they're completely barking down different trees, or up different trees, to what we're happening here. But what we have is this situation, is that would seem to be still on there, and it's still readable. The curious thing is, this is where it gets a bit weird, and I would say it fits either, is that the bits, I've translated most of it, it's fairly straightforward, and it is quite a spiritual thing. It does talk about this person shown here is the guardian of the spirituality, of the message, of the holy message, and there's mention of a Trinity in there. And you can see down here, this little bit at the bottom, it's like 3 statements, as I read it. And this is the scales here, the puis. So he weighs the balance of your life. And you are not, you got the not again. Not you are of this place, you're immortal. So it's kind of describing him as well. So it's curious, it's worth more study on this. And it's worth reading because the message does seem to tie in. But that would work either way. What does it prove? What I think Fomenko's done here is a classic piece of conflation. So what he's done, he's taken the fact that this could be a Christian type message. He said, therefore that proves it all was made in medieval times, which I think is a false comparison to make, because the message could have gone the other way as well. So it's a long way around to saying that point. Now, as has been mentioned in the comments there as well, actually we'll move on from that. Oh, hang on. I need to jump to something else now. So I was searching in there. One thing they mention, how are we doing on the time? Oh my God, it's getting quite late. Is this guy who I'd never heard of before. And it's a person I suggest everyone has a look for. I haven't put his name up there. I know his name. I've only read his name a couple of times. Joseph Davidovich. 100%. Joseph Davidovich. And this we come on to this geopolymer concrete, okay? So this was a project I was going to do. I hadn't read any of this and worked this out myself. Remember we were going to build a pyramid a couple of years ago? Mm-hmm. In the garden, I explained how we're going to do it. And it turns out this is the same method they put in here. This does come back to Rosetta Stone, which they haven't done yet. So, because that's going to be a first, all right? It's an international world first about the Rosetta Stone being a forgery, a fake. So the way we were going to build it... Oh, can you find the Jenga blocks quickly? Can you find the Jenga blocks quickly? They should be around here. Or any blocks. I'll use books, just to illustrate the point. What they do on here is they show that... you can read the whole article. I'll put the link in as well. They go through the whole thing showing you couldn't possibly make it with the large stones. You can't move them. The first question they make logically is, why would you use such large boulders or such large stones? They are so incredibly difficult to move. Why would you use those? Just make smaller blocks that you can move. You know, it's kind of an obvious question. That's the first one. Why would you use stones that weigh, 22.5, 15 tons, and then you got to drag them on a sleigh, then somehow you got to try and get them up the side of the pyramid? It's just ridiculous. And some of them are actually as heavy as 300 tons. So how are you going to move that? So what, I got it right, phew. What Davidovich has said is he does a step further that I had never done, was a chemical composition of how what he calls geopolymer concrete, and it's also known as, hang on, I've written a note of this somewhere, hydrosyncratic, I think, something like that. There's another name for it. Geopolymeric, yeah, that's the main one. Geopolymeric concrete. Did you find the cubes? Yeah. No, if you can't. Oops, that went well. Am I still on camera? Yeah. Okay. So what we're going to do there is with the careful, I was moving the camera. With the geopolymer concrete, then, or the blocks. So what we're going to do to build this pyramid in our own garden was build a block with a gap, another block, a gap, another block. And the reason you do this is you don't want to create one solid structure because that will crack. And it's like putting a massive lump of concrete down. It's just going to crack and break. What you need to do is smaller amounts of concrete so that it allows the building to flex and move and breathe effectively. If you have one large amount of any sort of earthquake or movement, it's going to crack and fall apart. So you have to do it in blocks. And all you got to do then is carry it up in buckets. This is why I had the bucket here. This is the key to building the pyramids. You mix it on site, and you mix it where you need it. And there's an interesting twist that comes from this as well. So what you do is you would build a block, you leave a gap, you build another block. And what I would suggest then is that you would, as your work teams, let's just stop a second. As your work teams work their way around, these will have gone dry. You come back to the beginning again and you fill in the gaps. I'll do it like this actually, so you can see a bit more clearly. Now, what struck me as interesting as well, another point to add to this, is if this is the blocks on the bottom level, the way I was going to build it was equal gaps in the middle. Another demonstration you can do, if you get air drying clay, like milliput, one of these things, another demonstration I'm going to do at some point. If you make that's air drying clay, so it's the best possible example like this I can think of. It's clay that you don't need to put it in a kiln to fire it. You just make your shapes and it naturally goes hard. Now the strange thing about it is, if you let part of it go hard, and then no matter how hard you try to stick a new piece of milliput onto it, it will not stick. You always form with two different blocks. Alright, so I would suggest you go every other to give the first one's chance to dry, and you're not waiting, and then you come in, you fill the gaps, then you do the next layer when the first layer is dried. This guy, Davidovich, he actually proposes they put a thin layer of mortar, really thin, like he says, as thin as a piece of silver foil, which I can't see any point in doing that, because if you let the first block dry, the second one will not attach to it. It will form a separate block. I'll do a demonstration sometime. You can try it yourself. I'll guarantee you that happens. Now, what's curious about this, if you... something has struck me as if a better way of doing it, well, I think it's better. It's going to be a question for you now, okay? If you put the first blocks on like this, if you imagine there's going to be another layer on top, what shaped letter are you forming? Yeah, it's a T, isn't it? And this is why the T, I think, is so important. Because one of the things I think Fomenko's got wrong, well, I don't know if he got it wrong, but it seems strange to me, or maybe there's some weird connection I haven't worked out yet, is he says the T is the early Christian symbol before the cross. All right? Either way, you end up with a T. Now, what's so curious about the T shape, if you a second, if I get this right, if we go to this place, Göbekli Tepe, one of the key features of Göbekli Tepe is the T-shaped blocks. I actually got some here, and the idea is they slot in exactly. See, all of these here as well, curiously, none of them look carved to me. They all look like they've gone through the same process, whereby they've been worked. or like with this one, it's they've maybe been stuck on, built up. As long as you do it while it's wet, it's fine. It's like milliput. You can mould, you can do whatever you like, as long as it's wet. Once it's gone hard, you've got a problem, because it does not carve very easily. It tears, which I think is also significant, okay? So these shapes here, you can see, I mean, just the look of it and everything, and this has been made out of some sort of sand or concrete. I don't think it's been shaped by endless sanding. I think this has been done, and what they had was a technology. They knew this technology of how to make concrete, and they could also make it into even more amazing things. And the other thing I was going to point out here was the... hang a second. If you notice that T, where else have we seen this T? If you go to places like this one, the Incas, they build with this T-stone shape. Now again, we've got this link, this possible link between the migrating people from Egypt, the Cymry, ended up in Peru, so connections and similar technologies and pyramids and all that all makes sense. These stones, again, a difficult one, right? But this shape, to my mind, would be the shape you would end up with if you were to build with the concrete method. Because you get two down, you forms a T gap, and you put the T, the T, the T. It keeps filling in the gaps. And you keep getting a T, a T, a T, and you can build it. And this would be the most efficient way to build, in my view. You put down your base layer of blocks, and then instead of having to put one in the gap, one there, and one there, using three blocks, you make one block. And if you make that narrower, you get a very stable structure. Now the question you have to think about is that a better system than just doing the modern brick shape? Maybe the brick shape's better. It's important though, because to my mind there's a connection between what was going on with these ones, or particularly gold Teki. I always get it wrong. Let's get this right. go Bekli Tepe, which is supposed to be, 14,000 years old. My hunch is it's much more recent than that, but there you go, it's only a hunch. And if this T system is better than just the brick system, you could say this is an advance on what was done with the pyramids, and this is more recent. There we go. That's conjecture and guessing a little bit, okay? Let's get back to what I was talking about originally, which is well, by the way, they could do this. If you go through the science papers, and this guy has gone on, this is an old article I found here. I can't find the more up-to-date stuff. I'll have to look online harder for it. But what you'll find is this guy has actually done more research. He's actually put patents in how you can make a modern concrete. I should just say something about how you do it. So what he's saying here, similar system to the way I was going to build my pyramid. You get it's a primitive concrete. Actually, it's not a primitive concrete. It's very advanced, and you can also do different things. I'll just read this bit 'cause it's well written, okay? So to obtain primitive concrete, it is enough to grind the rock into a fine powder. Remove moisture from it. I'm not sure, I don't think you need to do that. He actually contradicts himself there. Anyway, you get your powder, and you mix it with water. The easiest way to use soft breeds... I think this must be translated into bad English or something. Different types. Anyway, for example, limestone, where outlets are located directly on the pyramid field in Egypt. Here you could take it from under your feet, next to the pyramids under construction. Further, in order to obtain cement, it was necessary to thoroughly dry the rocks so that moisture came out of it. But in the conditions of hot and dry Egypt, where it rains sometimes every 5 years, special drying was unnecessary. After grinding the Egyptian rock, the finished cement immediately turned out. That is a dehydrated powder. He's moved on slightly from this, but anyway, it gives the idea. The fine dry powder is poured into a box. So this is what we were going to do. Actually, I wasn't slightly different to this. Make the mould a drop box with sides to it like this. And then you pour the powder and the mix into it, your cement mix. I was going to do it wet mix, actually. Maybe I should do it dry. And you would wrap this with some sort of material, a bit of netting, and then when it's hardened, you just drop down the sides of the box, take it away, and you can use the same box again and again and again. Whether you get the netting off is a different question, which is one more thing I want to show on the Fomenko book. Golly gee. Let's jump over to Fomenko. Oh, okay. All right, so what he's saying is here, this is the hieroglyphs you could see on the old drawing, but then they got bashed off, so it's not as you see things now. All right. Now, hang on a second. Oops. Oh, there's lots more Fomenko there. Sorry, I showed this page lined up already. There's the boats and all that, which I don't find very convincing. Ah, it's such a big document, it's going slowly. Hang on. Because there's some fascinating evidence he does produce then, is that on certain samples that they've got, and again, this looks similar. Now that, to me, I mean, on this large scale, you can see that's been... It looks just like it's been pushed out of sand. So if you look inside some of these enormously high obelisks, what you find inside is actually stonework, and you can see this one because it's damaged. So you find they build it out of blocks, a brick tower, and then plaster it with a kind of concrete, and then just draw the things in it. It's so easy. So easy. So building there, you could use concrete blocks, you could use stones, just build your tower, just cover it in concrete and carve them out. It's pretty easy, okay? Problem is you've forgotten this technology, okay? So, how we do on there? We may have presumed they use wood as a container for the molds, but material would meet the rounded nature of some of the block edges on polygonal walls. Yeah, see, I think some of the polygonal walls are different. They don't fit this system quite so well. I'm not quite sure why they do that. I was going to end with that. That's a good point. Thank you for that one. David Church, yeah, because what I want to do is explore this further and see how this fits in with polygonal stones as well. You know, multi-sided and odd shapes, particularly the ones you see with the Incas. I've got a theory that they worked... See, this can be drawn in so well. Oop, something's been chiseled off and some new word put in. That's quite funny, isn't it? It's all these different things here. Okay, there are different ways of doing it. That's not the bit I really wanted to show there a second. Let's go back to the Colossus there. So this is the cross they were worried about. You see this cross shape on the back. Alright. I'm going to get the page number off that. 503. Oh, there we go. Nope, just sharing this PDF. Thank you very much for this. Here we go. This is the bit I want. There's all things about the construction, how they did it, Fomenko's view of things. Right, you can look at the way the stuff is inside. It's very good, actually, Fomenko and all this. It's just his conclusions I find a little bit bizarre. Perhaps a lot of these type of writers and that, they come up with these fantastic ideas and findings, and then when it comes to the... something to up there. When it comes to... They just don't take it too far, you know? They make some fantastic breakthroughs. They show a lot of really massive holes in the current chronology, and a lot of it I'm bang on with. But on this one, for example, there are more recent photographs of the back of that with the hieroglyphs in place. And we got some people in Egypt. If you're in Egypt, you know someone in Egypt, please go and have a look around the back. They're in Luxor. I went there. I can't believe I went there. Never even thought to look around the back of them. But it was years ago, before I got into all this kind of stuff. So what I would argue seems to have happened, or could have happened, with where's the display? Where's the photo display? Oh yeah, here we go. If you can see, imagine the problem is now that even with some of the hard... Oh yes, that's the thing I was meant to bring back. Which also draws back possible links to some of the finds we've had in the South Wales field trips, particularly last week's. And I think an area which has got renewed interest is Garn-Diffyth, where there's supposed to be an underground pyramid. Anthony Williams found that, the late Anthony Williams, very sadly passed a couple of years ago. It's a shame, because I was due to meet him, and he passed before I did get to meet him. Well, it's a shame for lots of reasons, but that's, I didn't get a chance to have a proper conversation, record his thoughts on this, these kind of things. And we'd like to look more at round Garn-Diffyth, because what you'll find there is a lot of the stones in that seem to be called what's called Conglomerate Stones. And this would go right back to my good friend Richard Davis, who I call my friendly druid, over in Cwmbran. He took me around there a couple of years ago. Now, it's a very interesting area in Cwmbran. Again, to put some follow-up videos, there's so much to do. Where over there you'll find a lot of these conglomerate stones. Now, what he explains in going through the chemistry, I'll put the link up, you can read the whole article, is while you make these powders, and you put them into a mould and you stir it and you add water and let it dry in the hot sun. Perfect conditions for doing it in Egypt. You can also mix in other stones. Whatever reason you might want to do that. Makes it stronger, makes it more interesting, just bulks it out, could be one reason. Same as we're doing infill on this problem we've got in this garden. It needs infill to stop it collapsing. If you don't just put just concrete, it doesn't have the volume. So you mix in fine gravel, or you get the right sizes for different jobs. So those bits could act as gravel. So you find things like crystals in there, smaller stones, harder stones. Now, the standard explanation, as I understand it, I'm not a geologist, but for what I know about geology, what I've managed to find out, is the standard argument is all this is put down to sort of volcanic reactions or incredible pressure caused by, natural phenomena like earthquakes and things like that. So these things get crushed together over millions and millions of years, or extreme heat from a volcano, and that's how you get conglomerate stones. It could be, and this is why I think it's a very exciting piece of research for what we're doing with Britain particularly, where we find these conglomerate stones being used, particularly where they're near buildings and ancient building sites, like Garndyffaith, like the place I was on Thursday, up above Hirwaun, up in the hills there. I noticed a lot of conglomerate stones. I filmed them. Maybe they're not natural. Maybe those were made using a similar process to this. Also, the hard stone, this is why I think they've had, this is why I tend to think that, I would say the evidence, if you like, gives a lot of support to why this Rosetta Stone was actually faked. Because this ability to make the hard concrete was being lost. It's been lost. Maybe this guy, he's got some patents out that he's rediscovered how to do this. Oh, an interesting thing I should mention from Fomenko as well is that he has some interesting thoughts on this. It's conjecture, really, but I like it sometimes, a bit of conjecture, is this what was meant by the philosopher's stone in medieval times? Is this what they were trying to find? Is this the secret of the stone, whereby you could take powders and simple ingredients and make them into hard stone? And the strange thing is in Egypt as well, there's evidence. They found the grinding mills to do this. Loads and loads and loads of them. And what you do is you start with a large rock and you have large grinders, you break it up into stones, then the next one, the next one, the next one. It goes through a process, you get this fine powder at the end. So with these alchemists using these different powders and mixtures, because what you need is the magic ingredient to make it all set off, which in Egypt just happened to be found in the mud of the Nile. That produced the cement, if you like. That's the other thing you need. You need the cement, you need your stone or your grit, you need water, and then you can add other things to make it work better. So when it comes to my mind, when I got this Rosetta Stone back from Egypt, and they're looking at it thinking, oh, we got to show something. We got to show something. How are we going to do it? They could have just mutilated the original stone. It could be that is the original stone that's just been bashed away at with a drill. So it does look a lot like that. There's something about it to me, I just think might have failed to make it. But some grooves are a bit deeper, aren't they? But to my mind, for example, if this is supposed to be the same as this, they're not even close. And this is not just being chiselled at. It doesn't start off with straight edges. It's wonky to... Sorry. I don't think this is a really good copy that's been mutilated. It just looks like a really wonky drawing to start with. And this here, though, you can see is a human. See the arm coming up to touch their head? So what this usually means is they're drinking something like that, and it's about to go into their mouth, rather than up there somewhere. It's like looks like he's throwing something over his head. It's just badly drawn, and I got a feeling someone had a go at this for months and months and months. The bird's not too bad. Look at this mouth again. Look at that. Because the mouth means to proclaim or say something. So you see quite a lot of them. There's one to look out for. And these semicircles, these Titian laps, these T's. That one's a bit flat. That one's a bit like a little bridge. This one's a bit like a rectangle. That one's almost flat. Because you are comes up a lot when you're talking. Again, it's been butchered there. So what do you think? Do you think this is original? Do you think the least likely of the three options, I would say, but I'd be very interested to hear comments. This is what's on display in the British Museum. It's the most visited object, according to British Museum anyway. It's also, I would say, the most famous stone in the world. I can't think of a more famous stone than Rosetta Stone. It's quoted as the basis for all Egyptology and understanding of hieroglyphs, but you can't actually read it, because even if you did know how to read hieroglyphics, it's so mutilated. And what's that? What's that? There's a bird, but what kind of bird? You can see the forked tail. All right, so it's probably a. But there again, it's got the vulture's head. It's just not right. It's just not right. Why have you got a vulture's head and then a swallow's tail? Why is this all bashed up? It's so is it like just so happens that the Rosetta Stone, the one thing which is the potential translation device for the whole world, and everyone, I think you can get software of Rosetta Stone to translate languages, just happened to be really badly made, because it was made, the reckon is made 3rd or 4th century, very, very late on, and they had a real problem. So that's the first option. The second option, it used to look really, really good, and they've deliberately mutilated it to stop anyone else translating it. So I would say is perfectly feasible. Or as the third one, which is my personal favourite, but I mean, it might not be right, is that this is a very sophisticated attempt at a fake. And because they didn't know how to make the hard stone and do the inscriptions while it was still soft, they've been forced into trying all sorts of things, like drilling, gouging. I don't even know what they try to do. I mean, it's not possible really to carve this into really hard stone like this. But also, I hope you see your comments as well about the pyramids themselves. I thought I was being really clever a few years ago when I worked out that they must be made of concrete. We were actually going to build one, weren't we? We were going to build a pyramid in the back garden, and I showed how to do it, and I was all very excited. I guess thank goodness we didn't, because then a few years later, suddenly discover that, it's quite well known. That's the standard theory. But again, it's like, it's not directly Britain's hidden history, although the British had a big hand in this, because they're the ones who claim to have brought the Rosetta Stone back and everything. But it's curious, I've never seen this mentioned in any mainstream books. I read a lot of Egyptology books. The theory's not even put up. It's not on a TV documentary or something. Isn't this more interesting than the kind of stuff they... I don't know, maybe it isn't, but there you go, maybe it's just me. As I'm very interested to hear what people say, so please put in the comments as well. Okay, it's a fake, but so are loads of things in the world. If we can concentrate on real Welsh stuff. All right, so we'll get back to real Welsh stuff next week. But it's not... The point is, though, it is to do with Welsh stuff, okay? This that point I probably got lost in the translation a bit, literally lost the translation, is that two things. One is, one of the things people said to me when you're doing the Conglomerate book, and that's what put me onto this in the first place, is if we're going to show, like with this book, we can show very, very comprehensively that the language behind the hieroglyphs is Welsh, is Cymraeg. You just look at the Welsh word and it tells you what the translation is. Like entrance port is the great one. You got here, this is the fork, as in the forked viper. Forked vipers is fork, and forth. This is the way. This represents the way. You speak about the way. So bits of it makes sense. There's bits of this you can translate using the Welsh language. It's absolutely crucial to our history. This is 100% related to Welsh history. Because the other thing is, it also shows another example of the lengths that the people who are in control of the information will go to hide stuff. It's quite disturbing, and this is back in, beginning of the 19th century, when a lot of this was going on. I wanted to show, a few weeks ago we showed that Athens was completely redesigned in the 19th century to fit the classic ideal, and there's no trace of ancient Athens. It might not even existed. You can argue the same with Rome, and I would argue the same with the Rosetta Stone, which you have to remember is being used as the key to the whole mainstream translation, the claim that this shows and demonstrates how it works, when I would say it quite categorically doesn't. All right, so that's what ties back in. But well, next week they will be getting back onto more British stuff. Also, I'll be putting more videos up during the week, so I hope you've been watching those. There's some good site reports. There's another one to a very interesting place on Thursday. Oh, we're going to sing a song, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
My music's disappeared, though. I need music. I'm like, I need to just play by ear. So what we're going to do, we're going to do Amor Heed, or we're going to do Arthur's song. Yeah, please, more comments as well, please. Just finished and now I've found my notes. Will I miss anything out? Pictures of Rosetta Stone, Fort Rashid, page of the books, Pyramidion. Yeah, I'll put up the translation of the Pyramidion, okay? I also think that, and there's my drawings and that. There you go. I also think Fomenko's been called out a bit on that one as well, because I don't think his argument that finding a message which would fit in with Christianity would necessarily proves his point about the chronology. In fact, I disagree with it very much. I think it shows the chronology the other way. I think it shows quite definitely you got this ancient language coming from originally Syria through Egypt and then on through the migrations back to Wales, all right? We'll go back to Wales next week, next to Britain, some more stuff. And also look out, there's some more videos going up during the week as well. You ready to go on?
Yep.
Yep. My music was on the table. Right, which are we going to do on?
Come on.
Can you catch that computer on before it goes flying? Because it's going to... Right, okay, God, suddenly's hit me now. The adrenaline wears off a bit. So the tiredness of having hardly any sleep last night. I'm doing a lot of hard physical work today. Ricky and Gareth will laugh at that, because they did all the carrying. I was just there watching. No, I did some lifting and stuff as well. Okay, so hope you enjoyed that. Please leave some more comments. Remember look into the... I need to display something there. I can't see the notes. I'll have to sing. No, just play... Can you play Amor Heed, please? Let's play on the violin. That's why I close up. I got no voice left. I just realised I got no voice left. Oh, right, yeah, good question from Meg there. Got a tired brain cell tonight, I know that feeling. What were the pyramids originally coated with, somebody? Brilliant white. Yeah, well, this is the thing, is limestone. So the building on the inside is blocks, and then the outside was like a massive coat of limestone, done in a similar sort of way. The limestone would have been made in this method, which allow you to carve stuff and everything. The bit I didn't show tonight, which I'll need to put up another time, is what Fomenko also shows in Fomenko's book. As an example, which they claim has come off the side of a pyramid, where you can see it's wrapped. You can still see the pattern of the sack that was used to hold it in place as part of the mould. And there's lots of other things you can say about the concrete as well. I've got time to cover everything tonight, but you get, with real stone, you get things like tanning, where the outside facing the lights goes a darker colour to the rest, whereas with the blocks on the pyramid it doesn't happen. There's also the cracks don't happen. There's quite a few things you can show that they are concrete, which I find very convincing. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed that tonight. Oh, shame I didn't see your post. Alright, I'm going to scroll back. Let's read some posts. We've got Arnie playing. Beautiful, Arnie, keep going. Oh, I can do it on my computer screen, as long as I'm not sharing this thing. Thank you, Arnie B. Thank you. Right, I'm going to do a little bit more there. Oh, we've got loads and loads of people online, my goodness. Alright, I'll go back through to the comments then, because let's get the chat going here. Thank you, Arnie B. So that'll be the official end. I'm going to go through the comments. Right, how far we got? Okay. I know what was going on in London today. Right, Marshall Abrahams. I've gone back quite a long way on the comments. If you want to put your comment in again, I'll come back down to get to it, okay? You're done. Thank you very much. Okay. I'm just going to have a little chat at the end, all right? Progress of... Oh, don't forget, you get merch and stuff from the website. There's Alan Wilson, Britain's History needs you. Yeah, we need more people researching. And without Alan Wilson, none of this would have happened. Right, does Fomenko explain the carving of the boy Jesus... Chenoboscion in Egypt, similar to the... Right, now I don't know specifically where Chenoboskion is in Egypt, and very similar to the Tunic crosses in Cornwall. I'm just going to do it on here, okay? Thank you very much, Arnie. Thank you. That's why they got school in the morning. It's getting a bit late. Are you playing the sand? You can take the sand. You can play with the sand if you like. Oh, that's nice when your little boy wants to play sand castles and things. Go on, you can draw in the sand. I see. What have you drawn for Daddy? I'll get a whack in a minute. Right, I don't know about that particular one, but what Fomenko does do is show. That's a big part of his argument. What he's trying to show is that. I'm not back far enough. What they're trying to show is that. To get the right, okay, let's put it in perspective. What they're saying is that Christianity came around about 1000 AD, as I understand it, 1100, something like that. The pyramids and all the Egyptian stuff was built at least 1200s, 1400s even, medieval, because it's the medieval alchemists who worked out how to make this extra hard concrete. I'm giving you Fomenko's position, all right? With all these things here, now it's not because I necessarily agree or promote or endorse. I'm giving people's arguments and information to decide for themselves, all right? So that's Fomenko's argument. The reason why there's a similarity between them seeming Christian is because they are. Now, Wilson and Blackett, and I'll say there'll be a lot more on this in the forthcoming book, what they do is they say that Christianity is born out of the Egyptian imagery and story, and the Osiris story in particular. And that shows how the stories come, and over time it's changed. And before even the Egyptians, it was the ancient Assyrian story, which got taken to Egypt, and it's taken on. It's the same story that runs again and again and again and again. The characters get changed, they get dressed up. It's the same original story. So yes, both Fomenko and Alan Wilson would say that, yeah, the images are more or less the same because they are the same story. It's the plot's been moved. Okay, and that's what so it's just as bad either way, if you like, because Christians are very sensitive to the idea that Christianity is a rehash of the Osiris cult and predates the given dates for Jesus. And on the other hand, you've got it's just a sense of the other way around, whereby for the sake of chronology, you're suddenly moving the New Testament to 1000 AD onwards. They say there's no recorded history before 1000 AD. That's what Fomenko and his followers argue. And then the pyramids are medieval. So there you go. Take your pick on that one. I'll talk more about this at some point. And then it all ties into ours. Right, so Rudy and the Dogs. Observation deck done the best work, in my opinion, on the use of geopolymers. Okay, I'll look out for some of these. I haven't seen any other YouTube videos on this, but I'm sure there are some out there. The bit I wasn't claiming that to be first, the bit I was most interested in was the faking of the Rosetta Stone. Right, that he gave recipe and links. Ooh. To books describing it in all forms. They knew full well about it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. If you could, Rudy and the Dogs, if you could put a link in the comments, I'd like to have a look at that myself and have a read, and I'll share that on the description as well. Right, right, now, yeah, now David Church, excellent question. Why did they leave some of the massive blocks in the quarries? Or was that the archaeologists trying to fool us? Right, I think a little bit of both there. What seems to have gone on, Fomenko, I'm trying to answer on behalf of Fomenko, which I might not get right, so I apologise. His answer to that question is that some of the blocks, particularly in the lower levels, are actually quarried for closer inspection, and that's fine. That's not such a problem. And a little bit of deceit going on. So this is why they'd want to be deceptive if they were making these things 4,000 years ago. Seems a bit weird. Maybe the quarries are forged. I don't know. It does seem quite reasonable to me that what they did was put their proper blocks in the bottom few layers where people can see them, but then on the higher layers, that's where they go molded. So there's no lifting involved. Now, just to explain as well, you can't do this. You can't make one solid blocks. It will crack and break and swell and all sorts of engineering problems. That's why I was going to make my pyramid the way I suggested. So, right. Ta-da. Oh, yeah, Paul Cook has some swag. Okay, geopolymer here on the right. Okay, you lost me a bit with the syncretic. Yeah, the syncretic is to do with everything moving out from one place, isn't it? The Bible roots to everything. Right. Okay. If they were done with molds, then why not all regular sized blocks? See, now that is a brilliant question. What I would argue there is that, for one, the polygons, the polygonal walls, where there's lots of different shapes and sizes and all that kind of stuff. There's good reasons for that. Now, the first one is, if you're doing the method I was proposing, where you don't actually use a mould as such, you'd use a shutter system and maybe some sort of material around it as a possibility. I was just going to use shutters. I wasn't going to bother with the material. But I can see the advantages, because what you're worried about is your concrete sticking to the shutters and you can't get them off. If you just put a thin bit of material, you could just burn it at the end and it'll just burn and disappear. All that'll be left is a trace of the blocks in there. So my suggestion is you would do this on the building. You're not making the rocks and carrying them up. You carry up buckets of sand and buckets of cement and buckets of dust. You get to the bit where you're putting your next block. You put your walls up. I was going to make it wet, so maybe that wouldn't have worked. What they're suggesting is you put it in dry and you mix in the mould. I'd mix it in the bucket and then I'd pour it in between the shutters and I'd block it off both ends. So as I'm doing this, it's probably going to be slightly irregular. Now, more importantly, is if you look, and this is something which Bob Morgan pointed out to me the other day when we were up at one of the hills, is if you look at the way boulders fall, you get the large ones at the bottom and the smaller ones going up. Now, if you look at the pyramids, I'm trying to which way around it is, but for engineering reasons, you want different sized blocks as you go up. So as you're going, you'd need to adjust that. So that might be part of it. Now, as the polygonal ones, I think there's a very good reason for doing that as well. And I think, again, it amounts to making the boulders, if they are concrete, it might just be massive boulders. Like some of the ones I've seen, some of them, like at Cardiff, for example, I mean, they are not... See, again, the problem is, have they been re-erected? Have they fallen down and been put back up again? We need to find original walls. Because if you've got like a dry stone wall, another thing on the show this week, we saw it on Thursday, absolutely beautiful, stunning, and is Keith Price took us up there, who's a former stonemason, and he's explaining when you build a dry wall, you have like your capstones on the top, and then you have a ridge sticking out, which makes the water flow out, so the water doesn't drip down the side of the walls. You put like a little ledge, and then you put certain size stones, and you put it's really far more to it than just getting a brick and fitting it together like some sort of vertical jigsaw. It's much more to it than that. Now, one of the things with where polygonal walls really come into their own is to do with vibration and earthquakes, as I understand things. If you have uniform bricks all the way up, and an earthquake or some sort of terrible thing happens at a certain vibration, the whole lot will just fall down. A building's far more stable if you have different shapes and sizes. And the ancient ones, and you see a lot of this, for example, in places like Rome and Tuscany, where you see those massive ancient, supposed to be Etruscan walls, and they have various sizes, and they don't fall down, those walls. Whereas you find the ones with regular blocks do tend to fall down. So I imagine there's some sort of engineering significance with the pyramids where I didn't make them the same. That's my kind of... So the moulds are not, you can make a mould and take it up. Spot on level. Ross, the technique looks the same as the tombs at Saqqara. Yeah, I think Saqqara is one of the ones possibly done. Right, Dean Morgan, I lost count how many zeros there. 2.3, is that million? I think it means 2 million. 2.3 million blocks over 20 years. Work out 1 block every 3 minutes on Khufu Pyramid is pretty impossible. Oh, not at all. It's impossible, I agree. It's impossible to carve them and carry them up. But I did the maths, but a couple of years ago, didn't I? I worked out how long it would take to build a pyramid. I reckon if I had about a team of 200, I could build a really big pyramid within 2 years. I agree with Dean on that. Quarrying and lifting and placing, impossible. But you just need little teams of you get a constant stream of guys going up and down with buckets, carrying the buckets of sand, limestone, or whatever stone you ground up, plus your cement, plus you might need some other ingredients to make the whole thing work. This is the magical bit. This is possibly the philosopher's stone that the alchemists are looking for, that magic fourth ingredient. And people taking buckets of water up. But once you get there, it's just boff, put your boards down, pour it in, onto the next one. You don't sit there waiting for it to dry. That's 3 minutes. It wouldn't even... how long would it take? A minute? 30 seconds a block? Something like that? And you could have a dozen teams working simultaneously. So that's what I think I was going to do. I worked out because you have to allow for the blocks to dry. I'm trying to remember the numbers now. It's a couple of years ago. You can only have so many working at the same time. So you wouldn't want more than a couple of hundred people actually doing the moulds. And then as they get round to the other side, it's time to come back again as the first lot have dried, if that makes sense. So you do it in sections. So yeah, very, very feasible doing it that way. Very feasible. Wouldn't take long at all, I don't think. A couple of years, a few years. Right, the equally armed cross was found at Troy in red on white inside bowls. Aha. Yeah, that's more about the links again, isn't it? Right, how did they elevate the trilithons up in the air at temple complexes across the world? Even the concrete blocks had to be shifted. No, you do it in situ. That's the point. You don't have to lift anything. You just lift it all. You just lift things by buckets. You just mould it on the place. I'm not quite sure what the roses at the top of the pyramid, but the same as if you're doing. There's two ways to do. I'm not really good at building. All right, I'm not an expert on this at all. But if you look at ceiling roses that go around lights, it's a mould and you glue them on. But I would suggest with large items like this, you'd mould it where you are. You wouldn't want to mould it and then take it up and have it break or something. And it would take all day to move each block. Yeah, just buckets. Buckets, that's why I brought that bucket at the beginning. It's all about buckets, man. Yeah, there's all these things, Marshall lifted by sound, all kinds of stuff. I just think it's pretty easy, really. Right, now, yeah, but also some stones can be moved as well, yeah. Okay. I only seen T's at Göbekli Tepe. Yeah, that's the same with that would fit. If you got the two blocks, then the T shape would be the natural shape that would be formed if you made a mould there. And that's actually easy to do if you think about it. Because you make, well, it's a third less bricks to make. I'm going to make 3 bricks. Instead of making 1 for the gap and then 2, just make that into 1 and keep repeating it. Seems well. I think I'll do it the other way. Right, I saw an article the other day that said Göbekli Tepe was the portal of Osiris. I'll link the 2 sites. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised there. Nothing to add on that one. Stones with slightly different angles, like rhomboids, are more stable than regular shapes. Yes, like rectangles during earthquakes, oscillation in it. Thank you, Branrin. Yes, I agree with that. Well, that's the way I understand it anyway. I'm not an expert on this area at all. I'm just repeating some of the things I've done. Right, if the blocks need to be, David Church, if the blocks need to be poured in situ, does that explain why Göbekli Tepe was filled in with earth to raise the level to pour the next block on top of the T? I don't know, actually. I don't know why it's filled with earth. I'd have thought if you just wait for each layer to dry, you just stand up, you just climb up on the wall. I don't think there's a need to do that. You'd only keep doing it when the layer below. Are there no quarries then? Yeah, there are some quarries. And the question seems to be that the bottom few layers were done with quarried stone. And then higher up, they used the moulding process. Why they would do that in the first few layers is interesting. Why would someone want to be hiding what's going on? Or the other thing, another theory is, by the way, that Fomenko mentions, is that more effort's been made to sand things. Like, you know that picture I showed earlier of the head that's been supposedly carved, but actually looks pretty clear to have been moulded or shaped by hand out of a soft material, I would say is a better description, and then glued together and you get the trim line. What's weird is, if ever you see any photographs of these statues, or they're always pictured from the other angle. So, because if I've got a crack here, right, if I put these hands and I put this one slightly out to make a crack, from that side you can see that hand sticks out, whereas from that side you can't. You know, you can hide it by the angle you take the photograph. So there seems to be some deceit going on here. This is why it's hidden history, not lost or destroyed history. It's there, but people are going to a lot of effort to hide it. And another thing which I find absolutely, a couple of things I find absolutely staggering. One is that there seems to be a lot of work has been going on to sand them down, or even fill them to get rid of the cracks so you can't see them. I mean, to me, if you really think these are 4,000 year old objects, and you're prepared to put filler on and sand them to make them look like it, it's appalling. But unfortunately, the more you come across these things, the more likely that actually seems to be. The other thing that's going on, the ones with the obvious mould lines are being hidden from view. And another strange thing, which I'd like to look more into, reading Fomenko, was a very interesting point, struck me quite hard, was when Napoleon took like this army of artists and people to record all the sites. They made some amazing drawings showing thousands and thousands and thousands of hieroglyphs, walls that were literally plastered with hieroglyphs, and yet the majority, not even some, the majority seem to be nowhere to be seen. They're not published anywhere. And the point he makes is this enormous wealth of information and knowledge is on these things. And that's what got me excited. He said, if only we could read it. I'm like, yeah, we can read it. We can read it. Now this is the fun. Let's have a go at reading it. So the only... so you need to be able to read these... so all that information is being lost. Now, why isn't that in the public domain? Why isn't that all those pictures made available? Why aren't they just photographed? Not even in books. They can be put on websites. You know, lots of things could have happened. Okay, good discussion this. Right, on a second. Oops, just dropped up a bit. They could also melt granite. Yeah, I haven't seen the thing on YouTube, Dean. My guess is they would grind it and reconstitute. I mean, to melt granite, you've got to get over 2,000 degrees. Yes, you can melt it. It is... So look, who else we got there? I've said this to my mate about it being concrete moulds of some sort. Yeah, I think particularly the big ones, you know, the heads and everything, you can see lines. Even look. Once you've seen this now, right, you'll see pictures again of various things, colossi and obelisks and all that kind of stuff. You will see lines in them. You'll see it, which means either built with blocks or moulds. You can see them. It's amazing you don't see things until you're told they're there, isn't it? It's weird. It's the Emperor's New Clothes. Right, and it's like to, that would be okay for a wall, but for 3D might need more regular or irregular blocks. Yeah, I think the same applies, isn't it? Really, they shape the stones to fit and be able to withstand earthquakes. Yeah, that was my theory. I think it's very clever engineering in this. And the other impression I got with, thinking about the polygonal ones, it's coming back to me now. What we were going to attempt a few years ago, just so I didn't realise it was already out there. Well, what we're going to attempt there was to, if you're using irregular shapes. I think it'd be a good experiment to do. I might have to do this on maybe on a smaller scale. Well, obviously a smaller scale to build this. Thinking 140 metre high pyramid is I think the polygonal ones. And the thing is, they're quite big though. But if you're up there, I had this idea where we get the concrete almost set, so it's going to go off, but it's still actually workable, like clay. Imagine the consistency of clay. And then if you had a team of half a dozen of you, this is the next bit of the wall. Right, lads, all together now. So you're ticking your buckets on. You're all there with your hands. And you're flattening off. Why would you try and make it square edges? Why would you even bother trying? There's just no need. It doesn't help in any way. Bricks and blocks only need to be regular if you're laying them in a conventional method with a trowel or you're trying to make them balance. If you're just piling up boulders, you could do exactly the same thing. And what that explains then is why the joins are so absolutely perfect and so thin, and why it's so difficult to do. So I would tend to think that's how they would do the irregular ones as well. You just get up there and quite crudely just slap on the mud. Till it gets straight, it's going hard, it's setting off, right, leave that one, go do a bit over there, come back, stick a bit in here, maybe Johnny's made a little one, you're going to shove it over there, and you could mould on the wall. So again, you're carrying buckets up rather than carrying huge boulders up. Because bigger boulders, the question that Fomenko asked, why would they use such large blocks? I think that is for stability. If you only use small ones, they do fall down. Like dry stone walls are always being repaired, aren't they? They only last so long. Hadrian's Wall, we started, almost disappeared. I would argue if it ever appeared, but there you go. What's we got? There's a movie called The Great Period. Thank you, Dean. Big fan of that channel, obviously. Right. Codestone was supposed to be in a rediscovery, I think. What's that, Marshall? COADE stone. I don't know what that is. I am a bricklayer. Well, there we are. Anyway, I'll be interested to see. Thank you, spot on level. Hemp bridges in France turned to stone over 100 years or so. Well, there's a fascinating one. Hemp being a plant, of course. Because some of the examples Fomenko give in France with his those massive viaducts you see with the most incredible arches, and they're huge, and some of them are still being used as road bridges. And one of the points, thank you, Booble Weave, I think is touching on there, is that the great thing about this concrete is, apart from it doesn't weather, it doesn't crack, it doesn't tan, it doesn't form stress lines, all these wonderful advantages, is it seems to get harder and harder and harder over time. Now, maybe someone can help me on this, because I remember a few decades ago, give my age away, there's on Marylebone Road in London, there's one of the buildings, and there's these Egyptian-looking or Greek-looking women standing there with long robe-like dresses on, and on their heads, they're used as pillars. And the story is that they were stolen from, I don't know, Greece or Egypt or somewhere, wherever they're stolen from, and they're used as pillars. And the strange thing, I remember reading this, it's got to be 30 years ago, right? I remember reading that the material that they used to make these pillars was harder than modern concrete. It was so hard, they didn't know what the stone was. I remember this fascinated me at the time. And I was quite young then. I thought, wow, that's amazing. And there they are on Marylebone Road, all the cars going past and all the fumes and pollution, and they were going quite yucky looking. But it was still there. And they said they're incredibly hard. They never found anything as hard. And I've searched and searched in more recent times. I don't think it's my memory playing tricks. I can remember exactly what they look like. They've got like a sort of slight curl to the hair. Then they've got the sort of Greek style, I think it's called a chiton or something, where you got off the one shoulder. And there's sort of the breasts are tied in then with this little string, and then long flowing skirts all the way down to their ankles. If anyone would find those images, and it was on Marylebone Road, and I would say they were less than a mile from Euston Station going west. On the south side. So it's very specific. I remember reading about that. So if anyone knows about those. And I remember thinking, that's weird. They got the substance harder than any known modern substance. And I can't find information about that. But this would tie in with this idea of the concrete. And all this, the wonderful Romans, everything's Roman, making these concrete structures that have lasted, 2,000 years. So that's, if you can find me on that. Right. David Church, you may have presumed they used wood as a container for the moulds, but material would meet the rounded nature of some of the block edges on polygonal walls. Very good. Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yes, if you were... good point, David. Yeah. Well, if you didn't have the wooden shutters or something, if you just had, say you had basically a sack, a big old sack, and you kept pouring the stuff in, and you pull it together and you tie it at the top, and then just... Or where you're doing it, so we're on the wall and we've got this sack, right, come on lads, fill it in. So they're chucking in their buckets and they're mixing it all up and it's going in this sack, and we pull the top together, maybe tie the top to hold it roughly in place. Then you wouldn't get square edges, you wouldn't get corners. Yeah, good point, David Church, you would not get corners. You wouldn't get regular blocks. And then when you finished, all you'd have to do is, I would suggest you just burn it off and just disappear and leave just the stone. you can put it off if you want to reuse it. It's going to get a bit wedged in. Not much use. So I'm not trying to be awkward, but Puma Punker seems to be constructed of H's, not T's. Okay, well, the same thing applies. It's not being awkward, don't worry. It's fine to call me out at any point during this, all right? Don't get offended. I'm trying to find out the real story. I'm just coming across things and sharing it. And it's for discussion, all right? So I'm not taking it all personally. No, but H's work the same way, I think you'll find. Because you can take an H and slot into another H. Another one. It's the same basic principle. I don't think that changes anything, really. I'm not taking any credit away from the artisans of old. They worked hard. It's still blinking hard work, mate. I spend a morning moving the kitchen. I'm done. There were some amazing carvings, and if you look as well, what I would be interested in is Fomenko imply that all this was done, say, in the 1400s or something, and it was part of a massive building project going on around the world at the same time, the same era, using the same technology, okay? And that's because they have this Tartarian empire covering the whole world, including Americas, I think, as I read it. And their argument is that this was a necropolis in Egypt. Don't forget, there's 6 massive books, right? It's a lot of reading. And I'm about to flick through quite a bit of it. So I apologise if I'm messing this up. But the basic principle then is that they have Egypt was this massive burial ground stroke necropolis. And the reason for the long boats they give is that the bodies would have to be ferried there from, Mongolia, Russia, or where the emperor happened to be when he died. And the boats are long and designed in that way so they can travel down the major rivers, Volga and all those kind of things. And then they could follow the coastline, presumably of the Mediterranean, because these boats are good enough to travel by river and by sea. And then when they get there, that's why they take the boats apart and leave all the components, in their, what they said to be a tomb. The advantage that I've got uniquely, is I've read the notes of the book that hasn't come out yet, but Wilson and Blackett, is they'll explain why, exactly what the boat's there for. And I like to have a close look at the boats. I'm not sure they ever actually made any long journeys. But Wilson and Blackett saying why they're there and everything. Oh wow, there's some donations. Thank you very much. We've got some dollars in the chat. Thank you. If you want to become a member or join the Patreon, it'll start paying for itself somehow. It's full-time work, but there we go. I hate asking for money, but anyway, buy a book. That's the main thing. Give it as a present to someone or for yourself. Have another copy of something. And then we get a couple of quid off each book, which you share with Wilson and Blackett, by the way. So, right. Sorry, I've jumped a bit. I didn't mean to jump ahead then. I'm enjoying these comments. I think this part of conversational thing's good fun, isn't it? I just hope my boys have gone to bed. Thank you, David Church. The bags thing is very, very good point. And I'm going to look closer again at the walls like Garndifite. My worry with Garndifite, I think it might be knocked down and put back up again, which is why the boulders don't fit quite as well as they do with other polygonal walls. But I'd like to have a look, because the example they give in the Fomenko book, so I'll try and blow up, I can't find the picture anywhere, Angie was looking because I was out all day, is that you can see the fabric print on a corner piece that came off the higher stones, and it is very convincing, but I don't know how much, if it's 100% reliable or not, I don't know. Right. Mine's South American rope bridges. Right, Dean Morgan. Yes, Marshall, the same people built them exactly as like carpenters make concrete from work today. It makes the most sense. Oh, right, okay. David Church is saying, in order to learn the alphabet, you have to make all the letter shapes, including the occasional H and T, I, etc. Could be an alphabetical thing. I think it's more a practical. I can see Romans appearing next. A practical engineering thing, but there we go. Polygonal was bags. Oh, thank you, Tony Trismegistus. Yeah. So obviously you wrote this comment like 20 minutes ago, half an hour ago, or maybe longer. But yes, I would. That's the conclusion my logical brain came to without researching it particularly. bags stacked on top of each other. Yes, yeah, on your opinion. I think, yeah, if you imagine, yeah, you'd expect a bit more squish in the middle. That's the only thing, wouldn't you? I wonder if they had some way of hanging them up or something. Right, they moved and carved with vibration, much like your mobile vibrating and moving. Yeah, maybe, Brad. I don't know how they do it. I don't think it has to be that sophisticated. I think it's quite easy. A big tuning fork and a hammer. Okay. Show Fomenko's chronological graph. All right, I think this might be what you were upset about me not showing. They've got hundreds of graphs as far as I can tell. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Yeah, I don't know if I could show it. I mean, as I understand it, do it from memory here. The history is more or less correct from about the 17th century onwards, because that's like recent times, well recorded, I think is the argument. Then you have a slot whereby about 300 years of late medieval Renaissance time was duplicated back into sort of early medieval, so 300 years comes out there. Then there's a block of 500 years and a block of 1,000 years. So, roughly speaking, and I say this is just off memory, and I haven't seen any Fomenko graph showing all of it, just trying to piece together bits of information, is that the time of Jesus and that, who was actually a Russian, whose name I've forgotten for a second, someone Christos, was about 1000 AD, and then things progress from there, and there's no recorded history before then, is what they would say. All the recorded history gets slotted into there. Where certain areas which I've looked into very closely don't seem to add up. So I'm still on the fence with it, should we say. I got to be on the fence to everything, haven't you? So I'm sorry about that. Like, until I will get back onto that one. If you've got anything you want to say, ross@cumberglyphics.com. If you've got the full chronology graph that they've got, I'd love to see it, because I'm trying to piece it together for my bits. You can't. They train flocks of birds with sharpened beaks. Do you know, I didn't get on very well with my geography teacher at school. I remember when I was about, he annoyed me dreadfully. I wouldn't name him. Should I name him? No, I wouldn't name him. Anyway, he's probably long gone by now anyway. There's a few annoying things. One was, I threw my books out a couple of years ago, and I'm absolutely so upset about it. We were clearing out. I still had my school books. And the first lesson we did, I kid you not, the first lesson, we had to draw a square, right? And then with coloured pencils, we had to shade it really neatly. This is aged about 14. Really, really neat. And he showed you to the side of the pencil, like that. And then you go the other way, like that. And then the other way, like that. And then you could use your finger and get a really smooth finish. I couldn't believe it. Like, this is what we're learning in like age 14 or something. So people say education's being dumbed down. A lot of it's always been dumbed down. And the idea was, you see, so you could produce beautiful maps. So then you'd have to draw some irregular shapes and colour them in. I have to say, it's actually quite a useful skill. Mr. T, I'll give his initial T. And then the other one was so you could draw a map then, and it'd be like, rainfall map or something, or my favourite was always to do topographical maps. We do heights of hills and all that. So you do the green bits for the lowlands, and the sort of brown bits for the mountains, and the yellow bits for the high bits. So it was just colouring in, lesson after lesson. Another thing was, he was mad keen on long distance running. And our lesson was just before lunch, and he liked to go for a run every lunchtime. And I like to learn at school, okay? I've always been thrown out of the class for being too annoying and asking too many questions and things. I found school difficult sometimes, but there we are. By about 20 to 12, whenever the late morning lesson ended, in my local comprehensive school this is, he'd start putting his trainers on. So I think that's why he was giving us these ridiculous things to do. I got more and more frustrated. He'd be up the front, in his shorts, putting his trainers on, getting his shoes off. I'm like, we're supposed to be having a lesson, And the one that really did me out was he said, what's the definition of infinity? I remember to this day, I said to him, I'd read it somewhere at the time. I said, infinity, I said, if you imagine Mount Everest, and once a year, a bird flies up to Mount Everest, and takes a peck. And then flies away again. And a year later, it comes back. The bird comes back and takes another peck. The time it takes for the whole of Mount Everest to be gone is infinity. I'm looking back now, I was about 13, 14, like, that's an amazing poetic answer. And I just got like, because he hated me, he's like, absolute rubbish, nothing to do with infinity. Next person. He just crucified the whole class. There you go. And I'm like, well, I appreciate the technical definitions of infinity and it not being infinity and all that, but still, what a great answer, I thought. There we go. Gives you a much better idea than a number with an awful lot of digits, doesn't it? Yeah, what can you do? Right, so we've got loads more comments. I have to go soon. My goodness, 10:30. There we are. If you want to go, understand. Lesson's finished. Right, H&T should have been found. Yeah. So I'm not saying. See, I don't think it's T-shaped moles or H-shaped moles. If you've got a simple situation where you've got two bricks like that, and you're going to pour something on top, it's going to be a T, isn't it? And if you've got 3 bricks, so I'm going to have hands, 3 bricks in a row, and you pour in there, you're going to end up with an H, aren't you? So, because again, it's nothing to do with lifting them up. This is the point I have to get across. It's nothing to do with lifting things you build on the site. Same as Bricky's mortar. You take it up in buckets. You don't take up, the cement mixer with you. Right, Brad. Vibration within an object can shift its gravitational point to allow for a fraction of time it's travelling up. This time allows you to move it. Yep, that could be a way of doing it. I don't know. I don't know how you do that, but that'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it? It's a very large tuning fork. Now, that would be amazing technology, wasn't it? What's hemp in Welsh? I'm assuming you want a proper answer for that. Hang on. I want an English to Welsh one. Okay, I'll get an old... This dictionary is from 1800. I've lost my glasses, but the print's pretty big in here. It'll be okay. Let's see if I can find if hemp is in here. If you want to find the modern one, you can obviously just online dictionary, the GPC. Hemp. Warch. Warch says here. W-A-R-C-H. Warch. W-A-R-C-H. Warch. So I don't know why you asked that particularly, but there you go. Oh, is that to do with the bridge going hard, perhaps? Philosopher's Stone, right. You can add a chemical that breaks it back down to powder again. Ooh. That sounds good on the Paul Cook Show. Yeah, I'm saying Hippie Shake, send me a link to that. The lime sets it all off. Yeah, lime is key. And that was one of the, coincidentally, is one of the major, well, there's a lot of it in South Wales. My brain's tired now. It's one of the great things about, if you're looking for a small part of the world with everything, it is South Wales. Not just because I live there, I've lived other places as well. You've got the coal, the fuel, you've got the wood, the grazing lands, but from making things, you've got the iron, the lime, all the things you need to make a kiln and to produce stuff, it's all there, and it's all right next to each other. Even the metals, the gold, the copper, that tin, all very close. Obviously that's in mostly in Cornwall, other places. Stone looks so untidy. We're going back as far as the Rosetta Stone. Okay, right. Squirrel sniper. Many, many amazing things came from the Nile. The blue water lily took 100 years to grow, and 3 days only to bloom before die. They were found in the coffins of the pharaohs. Wow. Never knew that. That's very cool. Potash in cement. That's it. Potash, thank you. That's from retro modern art. Squirrel sniper. Also, the chemical structure of MDMA. Wow. Right, okay, what else we got? Alan Reese has done it as well. Welsh, yeah. Ross, check out Saqqara Tombs, same dodgy engraving. I will, thank you. That'll be my late night viewing. Look, it's already late. I'm going straight to bed after this. Okay, I'll check out Saqqara, what am I looking for? Saqqara engravings. They make a pig's ear of that as well, do they? I wonder, does any marks or drills? I haven't seen any comments on it. To me, it looks like someone's had to go with a drill. I mean, that's just what it looks like. When they try and just obliterate the hieroglyphs or create new ones, it's definitely been bashed up, I think. Or it could be. Sorry, there is a fourth scenario after Rosetta Stone, is that the French were bashing away at it with a drill before they handed it over to the British. There is that possibility. Just thought of that. Okay, the Great Pyramid was meant to have granite stone type scales on it. with nipples that were meant to help tune and channel energy. I have no idea about that. It looks like it was wet and scratched. Okay, T. Morgan. Marshall Abrams. Untidy is the word, and it's the wrong way. Horizontal instead of vertical. Fishy. That's true as well, yeah. Is hemp tanat or danad? Wach, I think, is what I found. Hey, Benny Babbles. Hello, Benny. Good to see you online, mate. It's probably a fake, just like the history they push alongside it, yes. Too funny, says Bobby Weevil. Sorry, Booble Weave. Okay, alright, we get towards the end of the programme now. Right. Oh, the comments are adding. It's like painting the fourth bridge. You get to the end and there's more appears. These dodgy looking hieroglyphs remind me of when I nicked and used my brother's engraver. Yeah, I agree with that level, don't I? That's Tony Trismegistus. Rhythmistic, Ross. How about after the stones had been cast, they could have been softened the surface so that printing the glyphs? I don't know. If they could soften the stones again, that would be really, really amazing. But I think it's easy to do it while it's soft, I think, isn't it? Well, that's the other thing I meant to show. I've got to get the milliput stuff. Is I've done stuff with it with the milliput. You'd be amazed. One of my speciality things was making really small stuff. So I'd make paintings about this size, like quarter the size of a postage stamp or half the size of a postage stamp. Do you remember the figures I was doing were like little tiny things? And sometimes people were doing Dungeons and Dragons and doing stuff on the walls and miniature things, almost like making doll stuff. I almost had a contract once making doll's house things, but I wasn't quite as excited about that. So one of the things I used to do is make little paintings about this size. I was hand paint them really tiny. But I'd make the picture frames and everything out of milliput, and I could put the detail and I could engrave effectively. Really tiny scale. Use this headset thing. Oh, I haven't got it anymore. You pull the visor over and you can really zoom in and use a sharp point. You'd be amazed how much detail you could get. But there's a split second would happen when it starts going off, and suddenly you instead of drawing a line, it would snag and it would tear. As a sort of, I assume the way the chemistry works is it bonds like this, and so you can cut it like this, no problem. But once that's bonded, you'd have to tear it. So I don't know how you break it back down again. I don't know. Linda Biggs, all very interesting. Thank you. Granite can be poured. Yes. They use granite in some places, definitely. Nettles, right. Okay, I think we're getting towards the end, I think. Marshall Adams, if they were going to mutilate it, they'd have done a better job, surely, like smashed to pieces. Don't think that's the answer. Yeah, I can see the logic of that. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, if you're going to destroy it, destroy it. Although it could be a case of, as long as you just make it so you can't translate it, because it's a translation tool, I think it's its main value, isn't it? Right, what else we got here? Benny Babbles, great show as always. Thank you, Benny. Yeah, I managed to think it back to Wales somehow. Hippie Shake, it's interesting. I think we come towards the end now, I think. Oh, hang on, David Church. Christian symbols found in Egypt could have been used to prove the Muslims should be expelled from there. Yeah, I think, well, part of their argument, I think, with Fomenko, you've hit on something there. I think we're trying to, is this none of this message really suits the Muslim position either. I think that's the question. And then they're saying the Muslim thing will come even later. Basically, they're saying that all these religions are the same. And they are incredibly similar, aren't they, if you look at it? You know, Judaism and Islam and Christianity. Get myself in trouble on these sensitive subjects. Right, got a title. All right, there we go. What were the pyramids originally coated with? I think the outside was supposed to be shining white, wasn't it? Limestone. Okay, I think we get towards the end. Okay, wow. Oh, no, just what happened there? Right. Where are you going next after this? Going to bed? All right, well, thank you very much, everyone. I think we're done. That's a long, long session. Thank you for those who stayed all the way through. Well over 2.5 hours, isn't it? Thank you for the donations. If you want to become a member, that'd be good. A couple of quid a month, that's all. Help out the cause, or Patreon. Brilliant. Main thing, or just buy the books, share the videos. That's the main thing. The most important thing is we get the word out there. As I always say, when Wilson and Blackett came along, they found British history hanging on the edge of a cliff by its fingernails. And those fingernails are about to be cut. And then they came along and pulled it back up to put it just on the top of that cliff for a little bit longer. And we've got to catch it, our history, before it slides back off again. Because that's our responsibility, as we're looking after this for our descendants, our children. And also it's really interesting to know, isn't it? I love to know all this stuff. So, if there are any past, you got nothing, have you, really? Who are you? Who are you? Just little atoms wandering around. And, it's too much for one night. But what I was going to get into as well is, I'll try and put I'll do a separate, I was a bit nervous in, okay. I'm going to say one last closing thought then. I try and keep personal beliefs and faith and things out of this, and just try and keep to, following the evidence, see where we go and that kind of stuff. But something struck me when translating the back of that, and I guess I haven't prepared it and put it up, is it does seem a spiritual message of, a positive spiritual message running throughout all these things. And even Fomenko talks about what he calls this weird form of Christianity he talks about, which spread all around the world and became different things. Is the important thing about here is a lot of discussion, a lot of time is spent on working out who Jesus was and all this kind of thing. What struck me is that whichever version you take and whichever you look at it, when you look at these ancient messages, it's the message that counts, rather than the particulars who someone was and where someone was and what line means this and what a particular word means. And it's a message you always remember, and it's a message of love to one another and that golden rule of life: treat others as you would have them treat you. And I think that applies wherever in the world you go. So there we go. Sunday evening, a little bit of and I think the other thing I might do next week is, I can't go into it now, is alright, there's the whole basis of what Christianity is really about. Here's a bombshell, and I say good night on that one, and I'll come back to that one next week, because something suddenly struck me after doing all this and tying all the things together and all that kind of stuff, is what Christianity really is, and what it's really about. And what the story of the New Testament's all about. big one there. So I'll leave that to next time. So thank you very much, everyone. And blessings to you, and love, cariad, and heddwch, peace. And until next time. So, heddwch. Oop. That's the button worked. Oh man, that would be such a good sign off, wouldn't it? That would be such a cool sign off. Hang on. What have you done to me here, Lily? I'm supposed to go back to the... No. No. It's not updated from last week. Alright, okay. I'll just have to end the show, right, with me going like that. Okay, till next time. North Star. God bless.